Reading stuff, it just comes back in. Yeah, I don't think. Who maintains that? And he was like, just remember, the only colors that come around the track are white and yellow. This is it's gonna be easy with it. It's not really good. So that was my feeling, like when people started working on the grass across from Three Sisters, I was like, oh, is that right? Like, it has never like but that's just it. So if one person does it day after day after day after day, and they don't get a ticket, that if you don't use for parking rights, one of the things I know they're extremely complicated, right? But one of the things in there is like, it's not parking, it's not parking. They think it's not marked as parking, but these are pretty cool. Yeah, if it doesn't look like a parking space, then it is not a parking space. And I can do that. The women were here.
Call this meeting in the New Shoreham Town Council to order. Today is Wednesday, April 19th. It is 6:21 PM. I would make a motion that we go into closed session. All in favor? Say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. We're in closed session. Oh, yes, sorry. Yes, sorry, I was rushing. The first item is the status of negotiations with the police union, which is on our agenda regularly as the negotiations go on. And I assume Marianne is going to give us an update. Oh, really? Thank you. Oh, it's the grievance. That's right. Sorry. You can see I didn't do my usual read through of the agenda this afternoon. So, oof.
The second item, what is that?
That is the community center, which we've talked about being in potential negotiations about. Thank you, Bill. Thank you for reminding me.
Big tinfoil hat. So people know who you are. So that's the only item we have on that.
How's that work? Good. Done. Perfect. How you doing? Good.
Yeah.
Talked to Steve the other day,
Yeah.
and he's, I guess he's got a house in July.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's gonna be here, which is some sisters here, and here's
Yeah.
the nice, you know, it's not,
Yeah, he was telling me. Yeah, me too. Yeah.
But, yeah, I'm glad that it's, and the girl down the street, her name is graduating here.
That's clear. I remember when he went down the floor. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Saturday.
Right. We'll call the open session back to order. To provide you guys with an update. There is.
Neil?
Hey, Neil.
Neil?
Neil. Oh, I thought he was out there too. To bring folks up to speed, and give a report on our closed session. Item 1 regarding the grievance, there's no update, and no votes were taken. Item 2, I am recused from, because my wife teaches a class there, so
Yeah.
I yield to Sven.
So the town has been in discussions with BED for a number of years and actually actively a number of months. And BED has asked to table the conversations. So we sort of are tailing that down and we'll revisit in the future, but it's been tabled for now.
Make a motion to seal the minutes.
Second?
All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. The minutes are sealed. We begin this evening with convening the Board of License Commissioners. And I would accept a motion to convene the New Shoreham Board of License Commissioners.
Second.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye. We're now in session as the Board of License Commissioners. The first matter is, the only matter, is to discuss and act on a new outdoor entertainment license for Block Island Pizza Pie Company LLC, doing business as Block Island Pizza Pie Company, 125 Corn Neck Road, Plat 6, Lot 134. Is there anybody here from Block Island Pizza Pie?
We have some participants, and let's just check and see if I did get them.
Well, I would make a motion that we table this application until we have someone here in person who can describe what they want to do.
Second.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That item is tabled, and now we will reconvene. Do we have to adjourn?
Close.
Yeah, sorry. I take a motion to adjourn the Board of License Commissioners. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. The Board of License Commissioners meeting is adjourned. And now we move on to the Town Council agenda and begin with public comment. Anybody like to make any public comment?
Can I make public comment?
Why not?
Okay.
We're all
Sorry to
friends.
be this during public comment, but and I just have to find the date, I'm sorry. The Senior Advisory Board has asked if the town council would be interested in. Sorry, I don't have my mic on. The Senior Advisory Board asked if the town council would be interested in holding a lunch bunch on May 16th,
Yes.
which means that we would make the lunch, obviously open meetings, like we couldn't all be there serving the lunch, but,
Well, we can announce it.
We can meet.
Absolutely. Yeah.
oh, we can make it a
Yeah,
meeting.
sure. So we'll make it a meeting. We've done it in
Oh.
the past. and-
Got
Yeah.
it. Okay, I'm not sure how that works for everybody.
May,
May 16th.
Um,
Buzz. Yeah. I believe all we have in terms of participants are solicitors tonight. So can we just focus on this for a second? It's May 16th,
May 16th.
lunch bunch. How does it work? Do we come up with a menu? Prepare it,
We make the food, we
Okay.
serve the food,
And we make the food in their kitchen?
we can make the food in their kitchen.
Great.
in the past, one person sort of taken a role of leading it, saying, okay, you come with bread, you come with salads, we all bring something together. We prepare it, we serve it, we all eat together, and it's about 2.5 hours.
Do you want me to do that?
No, I'm saying,
I mean, I might.
yeah, I would love
I
you to
do
do
that all
it,
the
sure,
time.
but I mean, we all participate, but I think I'm just saying to Keith, that's how it's been done.
So we'll just work on it together and book May 16th.
All right.
Thank you, Molly. I don't think there are any new participants, Bill. I believe Nick Solitro is here. I can't really see. Nick and James are here. Are they? Okay, terrific. Item number 5, the consent agenda. Are there any concerns or questions about any matter on the consent agenda that's before us? Tim, did you want to say something?
Is the green light on, Tim? Is the green light on in the microphone?
Yeah,
Yep, okay, thanks.
Great.
No.
no, it's on. Little green light. Oh, now it's on.
Now it's really green.
That's it, better. Yeah, I just here to report that 38 years of rustic rides, and right now, if you take a ride around the west side, you'll notice it's all grass. There's not a mark. And Gracie's Cove right now is quite accessible. It's tough to keep up with that spot,
Yeah,
but
thank
the
you.
entrance is looking good for the summer. And I've been doing that for years now, taking care of that entranceway there, and everything looks great, and I just like to say that Block Island's taken a few knocks with image wise, things have happened the last few years here, and I think, a great way to promote Rock Island, like when, you know, we graced the pages of uh, National Geographic and we, you know, Cooking Light Magazine, we've done Bridezilla, we've done A Wedding Story. You know, done a lot, Rustic Rides has done a lot to give a good image to Block Island. You know, and Rustic Rides has proved itself as a renewable, you know, something that, you know, could go on forever without bothering anything, hurting anything. And it's good for Block Island. It's a good image for Block Island. Best family fun. That's our motto. You know,
Terrific.
kids having fun outside, you know, and everything's great. It's all going good, you know.
Perfect.
Wonderful.
Tim.
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, I may be crumbling, but my
No,
son is
You're,
physically fit in there. They
Yes.
would, you know, run things and it's all good.
terrific.
And,
Thank you.
Thank you. for
We're
your
looking
work,
forward to
Tim.
another good summer.
Really
and,
appreciate it. Thank you.
Everything looks great, you know.
Wonderful.
Thanks, Tim.
Yeah, and I just like to see, you know, in that we have, you know, appeared in New York Times. And I could go on with, you know, Boston Globe and magazines, newspapers all over the country at one time or another, and shows that feature Rustic Rides. And it would be nice to see us promoted here on Block Island, the Block Island Times. I dare say in 38 years, I've never seen a little, you know, lots of fun at sunset. Kids having a lot of fun. You know, just a cheerful, normal little, nice little story.
You
That,
can talk
you know,
to the
it's a
Block
great
Island
way to
Times.
promote Block Island.
Stop by and see Renee.
And I'd like to see that day come where, you know, I was in 2003, the Rhode Island Cowboy. A map on the map of Rhode Island, a picture of me, my cowboy outfit on all their advertising in the
Thank
state of
you.
Rhode Island that year. Come to Block Island, come to Rhode Island. Go
Hey,
to
Tim.
Rustic Rides, a horseback ride. And it's a great way to promote tourism, promote the island, give us a good image.
You should definitely talk to Renee, and we really appreciate all you're doing. So thanks, Tim.
Yeah.
Very
you're
much.
doing a
David,
good
did you have
job, know,
something
and,
you wanted to say?
We've always, you know, never in all the years, it's funny because of all the controversy, but all the years
Okay.
we've ridden, I've never ridden
Yeah.
anywhere where
Tim,
I didn't have
Tim,
permission.
there are other
Tim,
people.
We
We try
love
to
you.
abide by the law
We-
and do things
Yep.
in a way that we're at
Yep.
top of the line.
We,
Safety is our number one absolute priority, and doing things in a way that are, you know, cohesive to everything, you know.
we love you. We appreciate your work and your record, and you're on the consent calendar, so it'll happen momentarily.
Very good,
Thank you.
guys.
Thank you. And then
uh,
Dave's
Thank
right
you. And then
behind you.
David's right behind.
It's been a long road.
Yep.
Thank you.
But,
And good health to you.
Glad you're doing well.
It's all good. Everything's going fine.
Good.
Roads look fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah, and the entrances are nice. Try out that entrance at Gracie's.
Thank
Thank
you.
Right,
you.
it's nice right now. You can walk right down to the beach, no problem.
Thank you. Watch David behind you.
Could I,
Very good.
oh,
In fact, I would like to see with Gracie's. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, with Gracie's, if they could make it so it's just an entrance that you could get there in emergencies.
It's on our.
I
it's
can't
on
help
our
but think
agenda.
about when
access
that
is
plane
there.
crashed and everybody was down on the beach there trying to get down there. And if there could be enough so a small vehicle could get through there in an emergency onto the beach
And that is,
and at Gracie's.
yeah, Tim, that is the number one priority on the beach access
Yes,
committee.
that would be
And-
fantastic.
And I think grants are in process. So thank you.
It would be great if.
Okay.
when,
David
you know,
Stern.
Something happens, you could get
David
down there
Lewis,
and. you
David
know,
Lewis,
help
Columbus
people.
Road.
Thanks, man.
Well,
David's behind you.
David's behind you.
We're on.
Thank you, Tim.
Second, you have a good evening.
Second time in 30 minutes I've been behind him.
Thank you, Tim.
David Lewis, Cunimus Road. So is there any specific reason why the contract for the Director of Human Services is not posted against clerk base tonight?
Good question.
I put it up this afternoon,
Oh, I just looked before I
Okay.
sat down.
so I went,
Thank you, Bill.
If it's coming, that's fine.
it should be coming.
Great.
It's in the works.
Great.
I don't
Thank
think
you, Bill.
it's posted. I just put that.
That's fine. I understand that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion would be in order to approve the consent
Can I
agenda? Oh, sure.
ask-
Sorry, Molly.
that's okay.
apologize.
Could I ask a couple questions
Yeah.
about,
Yes.
I just had a question about the, Boy Scouts. Just quick questions about, so does the town provide the porta johns for the Boy Scouts?
No, they don't. And they've, if I recall correctly, this is an annual formal.
No, I
requests
know,
that
I'm
they
just
make,
curious,
but we
like,
don't provide them with anything.
so
They-
we don't provide
right.
them, we don't clean
No.
them, they take care of the whole
Yes,
thing?
Yes.
Okay, that was a
Yes.
question I had, because I know the town has
They're
some.
extraordinarily self-sufficient.
And my other question was about the shed at Heinz Field, and I was just curious how many bidders we had on that.
Sometimes Shelley puts that in the memo. Let's see what the memo says.
I didn't see it, maybe I missed it.
I think we only received one.
We received one, the memo said we received a bid and David Sniffen spoke with.
One
the
bid was
town.
received from
Okay,
Lakeside
I missed
Trading.
that.
Yes.
It is here, sorry
Yeah,
about
it
that.
does say that.
Okay, never mind.
Motion would be in order to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
I,
Opposed, no. Consent agenda is approved. Item number 6, discuss an act on proposed amendment to New Shoreham zoning ordinance through application of Gary Pollard, section 111A 15. General prohibitions, section 311D, Old Harbor Commercial Zone / permitted uses, section 312D, New Harbor Commercial Zone permitted uses. We had the hearing on this matter. You may recall that we had this on a meeting agenda recently. Actually, we had item number 7 on an agenda recently, but not item number 6. And in order to act on item number 7, we would have to decide whether we want to move forward, which is what item 6 is about. Application is made for a zoning ordinance change. The council then votes yes or no. Turn it off. So, application, in terms of process, application is made. We have a hearing, we decide whether to go forward. And if we decide to go forward, we then craft the ordinance change. So item 6 is whether people want to move forward. Anybody want to speak about it? No.
Can I go?
Please.
So I thought a lot about this since both the public hearing, all the discussions, and then the draft that I think we've all seen that the solicitors developed, or at least the outline. And the more and more I thought about it, the more I felt like at least I hadn't been truly upfront. And I kept trying to define more and more rules, and more boxes, and more walls, and tightening it down. And I think subconsciously that was my way of saying I didn't really support the idea. And that was my way of sort of creating barriers that defined an effort that I didn't support. So I'm not really in favor of this program. I'm not really in favor of a gaming room. And I don't see a need to move forward personally. But that's just me as one person.
I would make a motion to reject the proposed amendment to the New Shoreham zoning ordinance.
I'll second it because I'm not in support.
Any comment? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. No, we had a public hearing. Opposed, no? So it's a motion to reject. A yes rejects. A no would say we want to go forward with it. Okay. So no, yes, yes, yes.
no.
Okay. The motion carries 3-2. So we don't have to do number 7. Millie, set a public hearing date for proposed amendment to New Shoreham zoning ordinance regarding application to amend the zoning ordinance by Mark Tilson requesting amendment of section 202A 112 definitions lot area.
This item was in front of the planning board last week
Yes.
and they, where the applicant waived the timeline. We are not quite ready to set that public
Okay.
hearing. This is a placeholder up until I got a confirmation of that this morning.
Great. Thank you. You'll just let us know when it's time. Item number 9, discuss and act on lease agreement for the town's hospitality center located in Old Harbor for a term of 2 years at $10,000 per year. So we came across something interesting today. We are on a month-to-month basis. The town's lease with the Ronoski family is on a month-to-month basis, and therefore we don't have the authority to extend the lease for any period of time. Now, I actually, for me personally, I view that as a positive because we've been talking about, I think nearly everybody thinks we need to take a hard look at the visitor center and our welcome center and develop a better sense as a community of, you know, what we want it to be, what it should be, what it can be, what we hope it to be. And I think we now have an opportunity, perhaps at an upcoming meeting in May, to talk among ourselves, talk to the owner of the property, and begin what I would consider to be a long necessary conversation around that issue.
I'd love to help, having been in meetings with Adam a lot and Donowski's, et cetera. I think they're very, very positive. Many of those meetings occurred prior to COVID, and then I think just everything went off the rails. So hopefully we can rejuvenate it in the same spirit.
And I think, you know, all 5 of us have an interest in this. I think at, you know, at various times, I think, I know people on the Tourism Council have an interest. I think people who have businesses on Water Street have an interest. So it's something that is on everybody's mind. I think as a practical matter, it's, you know, almost May already. It's going to be something that is unlikely to be resolved by the end of the summer, given. But I think in a way, we have a confluence of events here that I think is likely to help us to move the conversation forward. So we won't be acting on that tonight.
So as part of the Tourism Council, you know, we had a long discussion on this. And I think a unified stance of that this has been going on a long time, which is why the request for money from the chamber from tourism was delayed. It was the only item really not approved. So just to repeat what I think I'm hearing, so we're clear with the Tourism Council, because they do want to still support the extra staff to make it successful. That's what we paused on. So if they will be in that location through the summer, then the Tourism Council then can say, yes, we'll release those dollars so they have a staff to actually man it. So is that
Yeah.
accurate?
Yeah, that's accurate. I mean, just so you know, my take on this was not to do a 2-year. If we could have extended, my take was to extend it for 6 months while we have this conversation. Because I think it's the kind of thing where if we extend for 2 years, we'll be here. Well, I may not be, but we'll be here in 2 years. That's a very good point. So anyway, that is item number 9. Item number 10 is discuss process and timeline for parking ordinance amendment. I have just a couple of things to say before Neil begins. First is, if you have not seen this document or the previous document that Neil put together, I think you'd likely agree that the amount of work that has gone into sort of really taking a comprehensive look at ordinances, practices, et cetera, has really been terrific work. And also, the amount of time that Marianne and our chief have put in on this has been welcome, and I think indicates that there's consensus around needing to do a bunch of things around parking. Neil, I think, is going to go through some of, we actually have areas where we don't have ordinances that underpin our rules.
That was. Turn your mic- yeah.
So anyway, one of the things I'd like to do, Neil, as we talked about, as we've talked about, is go through these, pick our low hanging fruit, set aside for discussion at the end anything that needs a lot more conversation. And thank you for doing this, Neil.
Yeah, so the item that's on there first as number, what was it, number 10, timeline for a parking ordinance. Marianne, the document on here is part of the document, but if you could just walk through what we talked about, it's not in here, but the timeline of to get through with the state, with the town, with the 3 weeks posting, since you're expert on that.
So what has to happen, what's being presented to you this evening is a number of ordinance or changes to an ordinance as it relates to parking. A lot of the language which Neil will go through is even updating the language and making it more contemporary. Like we've said, one particular ordinance talked about no parking from the Transu's house. And not everyone knows where the Transu's house or where they lived 30 years ago in that house. So that type of stuff is some of the low-lying fruit that Keith is referring to. Once the council approves the ordinance that should be changed or the changes that should be made, the attorneys will spend the next couple of weeks getting into the form of an ordinance. They'll come back to the council on their May 2nd meeting. At that point, you will set a date to hold a public hearing that needs to be advertised at least 3 weeks prior to holding the public hearing. So I see the public hearing possibly happening in the first meeting in June or the middle meeting of June, and I don't have those dates off the top of my head. The 17th of June or 2 weeks early would have been the 21st or the 7th of June. So what the council is going over tonight is going through the particular items, what they would like to see the solicitor draft in the form of an ordinance, which a lot of the language Neil has already started on and put in a form that would allow the solicitors to go through it relatively quickly. And hopefully, if we have the hearing on the 17th of June, we can close the public hearing, and then the ordinance will be in effect
Great.
as of that meeting.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Great. So as Keith said, so there's a lot of detail here. So let's not pick apart the words, or it's really to get the general rule of there's not a whole lot of parking ordinances out there. The first tab you'll look at is the 5 that are on record. And part of this complicated as we've gone through it, and poor Nick, who's on the line, has had many calls with me, is managing through how we actually stage these changes on state roads that the town doesn't have the right to make changes without state approval. So what we're going to do is go through this, and you'll see there's town decision versus STC, which is the State Traffic Commission. I've been in touch with them multiple times. The good news there is he is, I think for those that were at the last meeting where I talked about this, the State Traffic Commission said, we understand Block Island has an issue. We are more than happy to work with you all to make it where we need to be. So having Moynihan also on his commission, he's the one appointed person, will also be helpful. I've had 2 calls with him to kind of walk through what we're trying to do, and he's supportive. So So I'm going to start with just high level. So the first one is parking with ordinances. Second tab's parking without ordinances, and that may be state or local. You have traffic for police input. You have approved by state, but there's issues in the language. And then there's other fundamental decisions. So as I was going around the island and literally measuring spaces between signs and where the signs were, other things came up that are aligned to parking, but not directly. That language in either the state or local is wrong as well. So this is really a very administrative type burden that we're going through. However, the number one thing that came out of the focus group was enforcement. So we've been working with Mary Ann and the chief to really lay this out. So we are focused on enforcement for this year before we do too many things around other opportunities. So I'm going to actually jump and it should have a heading on the top of each page. I'm going to jump into the first one, which is parking with ordinances. So currently, the old ordinance, if you look at the top of the spreadsheet, it's what's on record right now. The second column is what's on record with the state, if anything. Police comments is more for recording what comes up. Comments were really for me to better remember all the things that I found when I was out there. And then if there was a proposed rewrite, that was just me taking what seemed like a no-brainer item, putting it in a box for the lawyers to then put into appropriate language for the town. So the first one is Water Street. It talks about Chapel Street. This is where Mary Ann referenced the Transit property. Well, right now there are no parking anytime on Chapel from, there is no parking on Chapel Street basically right now. So all we need to do is codify what's really there versus what's on record. So on Chapel Street, the rewrite would be proposed to say on north and south sides of entire length of Chapel Street from Water to Old Town Road, there would be prohibited parking. There's no place to park. One of the things in the town ordinance is, and this is where signs aren't required, if it's a road that doesn't have a side to it, meaning where you could pull off, that's endangerment. And there is no parking allowed in there. So that's already in ordinances. So in theory, Chapel Street really doesn't have anywhere to park on the side of the road. So you'd be creating a traffic issue. So the first one up is to reword it from just what was the east end from Weldon's Way to Water Street, there's no parking, is to just codify that it says there's no parking on Chapel Street. Any questions, concerns?
And is that ordinance or STC?
Actually, good question. So that would be STC because it's a state road. Correct. Yep.
And your vision of this is that you would bundle these?
Correct. So good call out.
Yeah.
So these are done line by line. So the goal is let's get 80%. If we debate 20%, we can come back to them. But I did it line by line so we don't ruin the whole thing and we get some of the things on the books. But yes, so it does require, if it's a state road, we need to go back to the State Traffic Commission.
Mhm.
And again, I shared this with the commissioner so he knows the format, and Nick and James are also comfortable with it to help state
Great.
that. Next road, Corneck Road, along the barrier fences at Scotch Beach, both east and west, approximately 100 feet north of the old Foster driveway. So right now on the state, it says no parking anytime on Corneck Road from 100 feet south, an entrance of Scotch Beach Rotary, which I'm not even sure what the Rotary was. Probably it's on the west side. So what I did was document where the signs are currently on Corneck Road in the details. So tab 2 and tab 3 will have the specifics on that. So we can come back to that because it needs a broader conversation. Obviously, when they wrote this, Corneck Road, the only area of focus was around Scotch Beach, but Corneck Road has signs north of Scotch Beach all the way to the town that need to be addressed. Dodge Street, again, same thing as Chapel. There is no parking. Yep.
A question on that. So what are you asking? Or is that an update or?
No, it's, so there's a current town ordinance,
Yeah.
and in order to do it right, it has to be in more detail than it currently is right now. So when we get to the parking detail in the next tab, we're
Okay.
gonna talk about all the parking signs that are on Cornick Road.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
so Martha, you got this document in advance, so you could take a look at it. If it, and there was an opportunity to, okay, you made a comment, we should have had a map. You've had this for,
She was
okay, what
asking
did you
for a
say?
map.
I said instead of this extraordinary amount of text, wouldn't it be better to ultimately codify this into a map?
Well, yeah, I mean, long range, that could be a goal, but you can't codify it into ordinance without the words. Correct, yes.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
about, Dodge Street, the library?
Yeah, so I have that called out on the next tab.
Oh, okay, sorry. I
Yeah,
missed that.
because that's a little odd. It does look like from the plat maps, but that is state road, so that would be, that's on the next one. Yeah. So Dodge Street, you can see it says no parking. There are some signs that say no parking. Back in the day, there was an ability for the Surf Hotel to park in front of the Surf Hotel. My recommendation would be just make it easy. There is no parking on north or south side of Dodge Street from the intersection of Water Street to Bridgegate Square.
And that too would be an STC bond
Correct.
in the STC.
That
bond.
is correct.
Gotcha.
Next one was High Street, Fountain Street to Dodge driveway, north side and east opposite the Block Island School property. Currently on record, there's no parking anytime on High Street from Dodge Street southerly to 200 feet. So a lot of the ordinances as well as the state reference Dodge Street, which is Martha, why I sent you the text on was Dodge Street, anything other than what it is today. So that's some of the issues. It's quoting Dodge Street in this case. They probably meant Water Street from Water Street. I'm sorry.
You on High Street?
I'm
Yeah,
on
I
Dodge
think-
Street.
So the first box says Dodge driveway and the second one, right, but I think the second one, maybe they just got it misconstrued.
Correct. This is where when it went from the town to the state, something happened that different words were
Right.
used. So again, those are just areas we just need to correct it to the right language.
Cleaning up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And again, this is, the goal is, as minutia this is, to allow the police not to have an issue with giving tickets ultimately. High Street, Fountain Square to Dodge driveway, north side and east side, opposite the Block Island School. So I broke this out on the High Street tab so we can come back to it. But there is current signage. So it's really, this is just adjusting the feet that the signs are referenced and cleaning up that language as well. Mohegan Trail really isn't applicable anymore. That talks about the Vale driveway, which there are now houses in front. So that driveway doesn't even, so that would simply be rescind from the state. And then Water Street, from Fountain Square to Surf on the north side, so you can see the current ordinance. I've separated out the town dock area because that's a little more complicated. But basically would be just putting in that on the east side of Water Street from Fountain Square to the intersection of Water Street and Dodge, there is no parking. And then break out further the ordinances around, or the language around the west side of the street that is dictated currently to street cleaning as well as restricted parking. And then Weldon's Way, currently the language in there is that it only addresses behind the Empire Theater, which basically says there's no parking there. The town at some point put parking there, so we're in conflict of the ordinance. So that can easily be updated to change that language. However, I felt like Weldon's Way, being the only, one of the only town roads where we have the ability, needs a deeper dive. I've documented all the current signage on there, but that does not have to go to the state, so we can talk about that.
Right.
So my recommendation would be there is to move forward with correcting the language about the Empire Theater. And if we decide there's a need to do other things on Weldon's Way, we can table that.
Terrific.
If you jump to tab 2, when I was driving around the island, if there were signs or no signs, and again, some of this is overkill. I figured I'm doing it, put it on there. And if we don't need to talk about it, I call it 2B. I don't know what the official name of it is. But Second Bluffs, there isn't any signage currently there. Do we want to put signage? Do we, is there an issue? My gut was probably not, but it's something to be able to raise. Ball O'Brien Park also currently has signage that does say Ball O'Brien parking only, but there is nothing else there around if we needed or wanted to do timed parking there. Again, we'll talk about towing, but does it need to be more restrictive than it is? It seems to work. I play tennis there. I don't have a lot of issues.
Can I ask a
but-
question about this one, Neil? When we're talking about Ball O'Brien Park, are we talking about the lot at Ball
The
O'Brien
parking
Park?
lot.
The parking lot.
Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't sure whether we were talking about
No, they have parking lot.
the parking along.
Yeah.
West Side Road there. Great.
So Beach Ave, there are no parking signs on the east and end of Beach, and there are other signs on Beach Avenue. So proposed recommendation would be say no parking on Beach Ave for 25 feet. And again, this is just documenting signage that the town put up.
Right.
So if someone has an issue with an area, that's really all the argument is. So if you think no one should park on, or you, wherever, they raise it. So I'm not sure going line by line. Now that I'm going through it,
So can I want to, because I've been just sitting here having the same thought. I think it would be helpful, Mary Ann or Chief or Neil or the three of you, to put together a packet of the STC requests that we need to make, along with a map. I agree with Martha, because I have I sometimes get lost as I'm trying to figure out which is the east side and which is the west
Yeah.
side. And then, we'll make those available obviously on ClerkBase. So a lot of this is we have, because the way that I see this, as you've explained it to me and I've thought about it, we have declared certain areas no parking without the underlying permission to do that.
correct.
So we need to remedy that.
Yeah.
And that's what largely the STC packet is going to be.
Correct.
Right.
So I did filters on this. So all we
Yeah.
have to do is sort it by things going to the STC.
Does that approach make sense to you, Marianne, where we, at, say, our first meeting in May or whatever, we have a packet that is that where we have a resolution that we adopt saying, we hereby transmit to the STC for permission. Obviously, we'll talk about those things if any of them are problematic. Now, if they're problematic, we're going to have to be taking signs down, it seems to me. But that's a discussion for a different day. But does that approach make sense on the
Yeah.
STC stuff?
Yeah, there are a couple of things that I think are worth discussing that are more decisions
Yeah.
than the nuance of
Right.
actual street signs. So if you jump to, let's go. So the one, if you go to tab 3, traffic for police input. So as we talked about at a previous meeting, the no left turn on from Chapel onto Water was, the sign never went back up. We had done it for years and then it just stopped. Well, after researching with the state, that actually is approved by the state. So that can go back up. The difference and really the only kind of decision on that, unless someone argues we don't want to do that, is that the current state ordinance references Memorial Day to Labor Day. The current parking ordinances for the town reference May 15th to October 15th. So it's just the nuance. It's going to be easier for us to adopt the language of the state because then we don't have to go and change that as well. So what I would recommend is that we change our parking ordinance to reflect Memorial Day to Columbus Day, with the understanding, just the nuance of that is Memorial Day is a Monday. It doesn't say Memorial Day weekend, and then Columbus Day would be the Monday. So that's when stuff would be in effect.
Gotcha.
And this is a real question, but are we still calling it Columbus Day? Is the
Right,
state calling
yeah.
it Columbus Day? Or are we going to refer to it
don't
that
know.
way?
That's a good question.
I'm just
Yeah.
being
I
totally
s-
serious.
No, it's a good question.
So,
The
so I do,
ginger's people.
Well, we cut it, it's a defined day. Something Monday. And you don't have to call in other than.
Yeah.
Is it second Monday in October? I was just gonna say.
Yeah.
so,
Second Monday in October.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good idea. Yeah. Right.
so in the past, this is great. It's phenomenal. And as you put the SDC package together, in the past, we've had, I'm not exactly sure of his title, Bill may know, but we've had a safety person look at some things. And maybe the chief can do this, but I don't know if 97 feet from it, like I'm looking at some of your details. And I guess my question is, given some of the roads or some of the intersections, something like that, is it worth to have somebody look at the SDC packet and say, oh, that should really be 120 feet, or, just a little bit more extreme? And I'm just thinking,
Yeah.
while we
Yeah.
are all in the action.
So all that details in here.
Okay.
So whoever's gets put in charge. I was gathering the information, not making decisions
Right.
or.
I'm just thinking that I just want. somebody to
All the
overlay.
parking problems are Neil's.
Yeah,
problem.
exactly. I'll go down as the parking.
Oh,
you know.
don't worry.
But
You see what I'm saying?
yes, and totally agree with you.
Yeah.
So, but I do want to continue on other things the council directionally has to.
But in terms of, do you have a sense on the Chapel to Water Street? Is there consensus that we want to put that sign back up and have it be Memorial Day to the second Monday in October?
Yes.
Is that where people are?
I'm
This is the left turn from Chapel onto Water.
and water on.
And in theory, there doesn't need to be a vote
Um,
because it's already in the state.
Gotcha. Okay.
This is so if I'm coming
Toward the boat,
towards the boat. Okay,
no left
Not
turn.
taking a left turn. on-
not taking a left turn, which always was there. Could we make it easier instead of, I mean, I think that Bill McComb has told us this is the way they did it in the past, and correct me if I'm wrong, but could we just put the sign up on Memorial Day and take it down?
Oh, yeah.
And
yeah.
instead of, I was, okay, because I was gonna say to have dates on it might be a little confusing for somebody who's
Yeah.
wanting to make
I
the
think
turn and like,
That's
I'm
right.
gonna consult their
Yeah,
calendar
yeah,
at the same time.
Makes total sense.
Yeah.
Okay, we just put it up and take it
Yeah.
down. Okay.
So then the other things discussed with Marion and the chief were around the price of ticket. I'm going to go a little out of order because the price of the ticket then dictates maybe we don't go in other directions on some of the things around
Okay.
booting, towing. So, or repeat tickets. We talked about this the last time. So the recommendation of the various people in focus groups, as well as the chief, Marianne, and myself, have landed on $50 as the recommendation for the ticket to change behavior of parking. And this would be the after 2 hours of parking in the 2-hour parking area. So that would be up for discussion.
And that would be by ordinance.
Correct.
And I'm sorry, what is it now?
It's 20.
So
now.
20 to 50.
So if we're in agreement with that and the state, so the fees are left to the town to decide. So that does not need to go to the state traffic commission.
So we had talked, or I had talked about having a different rate for if you park in a handicap spot or a taxi stand. I don't know how anybody else feels about that. Higher,
Higher than the 50? an
higher than the
additional?
50.
If I'm not mistaken,
There's
Chief,
tons.
correct me. It's already $75. Isn't that already?
Is
Yeah,
that state-
that's a
probably
state,
statute.
that's a state statute.
Okay, so my follow-up on that would be like, that's great. Could we put that on the signs? Like, could we have it added to the handicap sign, $75
So you raise a
ticket
good
for
question.
violation?
So Nick, I don't know if I'm gonna throw it on you, but we did raise the whole idea of the fee being on signs. And if it was required or not, it seems a little vague. Currently, the town ordinance says it should be there, which we would want to amend if we don't end up doing it. But Mary Ann thought there could be a way, at least in Water Street, to put the amount, since that's the biggest area of, to potentially add it to the existing signs. So,
That makes sense to me. You know, well, I'm assuming it would be a pretty simple $50 fine.
yes. Yeah, because the cost to redo all the signs
Yeah, yeah.
just is, it's,
Crazy, man.
you know,
Yeah.
cost prohibitive.
And you're not going to get it done in time.
Gotcha.
And then, while we talked about doing something like that on a temporary basis and then long-term eventually
Sure.
get the new signs.
So in other words, to answer Molly's question, it wouldn't be a problem to put $75 fine on handicap spots.
I don't see why not, because there's not that many.
Gotcha.
Correct.
I agree.
So then so if we're in agreement on the 50, then it changes the conversation around the escalating price of a ticket. So, and the multiple tickets in one setting. So, Mary Ann and the chief and I talked, you know, with an increase to $50, would that maybe curb behaviors that you wouldn't have people staying all day? And do we really need to move to multiple tickets in a day? It wouldn't preclude us from doing that, but the thought was we would go down, see how this works with $50 tickets, and then there wouldn't be multiple tickets the same day.
So for me, that I think it makes sense if this is where Chief Lynch is to give it a shot this summer. You know, it doesn't have to be data, but even anecdote, you know, we'll know if it's, I think we'll know if it's
Yep.
not, if it's not working.
Yep.
And you know, keep that tool for the next time around. Does that make sense to you, Chief? Yeah.
So in many communities, and I don't want to get into a lengthy discussion on this, in many communities, they have multiple ticket offenses. Or,
Yeah.
you know, like you'll see a car with 3 tickets on it or 4 tickets.
Mhm.
At least that's what I've seen. I don't have any idea what Rhode Island, especially South County, does as a general statement. But it would seem to me that I don't know why we wouldn't do multiple tickets. And you know, is that a deterrent? I don't really want to get into a huge dialogue about it, but I mean, if somebody's there, they know it's supposed to be 2 hours and they're there for 6 hours and they have enough money to blow off the $50, I don't see why we wouldn't do that.
Yeah, I mean,
You know,
I think we talked a
every-
little bit
I'd like
about
to
the.
Say
admin-
something,
yeah.
because everybody says, I don't want to, I'm saying something, basically shutting everybody else off. And I don't, as you all know, I don't appreciate that. I really think you're getting into an administrative nightmare. Multiple tickets on a windshield could be more than one day if the town doesn't have the capacity to tow. If the town doesn't feel it's a priority to tow. You know, I've said this before, I'll say it again. I think our police force has lots of, I'm a lot more concerned with drinking on the street than I am with somebody who's parked 15 minutes over 2 hours downtown. And, you know, I see a lot of alcohol on that street. And it's, people think it's fine, people think it's accepted. We were talking about the bike cops the other night, and the reason I remember how long the bike cops have been here is I remember a young man on a bicycle, one of the bike cops, before the sidewalks were paved, and a lot of this goes back, before the sidewalks were put in, to, before we had sidewalks. There was a lot more space on the sides of the road and lots of spaces. And he's in front of Red Right Return when it was just pavement, and the kid is pouring the bottle of Heineken in the road. And I think that sent a much stronger message to the person from whom it had been taken than a ticket would. I mean, he's watching his beer just disappear. It was painful. It was, and that's how I know how long, that's how I can remember how long they've been here.
So with that said, I still don't know why one wouldn't have.
So Miriam wanted to pipe in there.
If you don't mind, I jump in
Yeah.
at this point. We did talk about this, and one of the concerns we have is we're still in a very paper ticket processing system here in Block Island. One of the things the chief is starting to look on is more an automated process, whether the payment can be online. I know a community that has now handheld ticket devices. So let's get through the summer and let us get to a more automated process.
Yeah.
Going forward. And, then we discuss, okay, if it's 2 hours, is the limit on the ticket. So do you give them a second one at 2 hours and 1 minute? Or is it 4 hours or it's 6 hours? So I think let's try with the $50. Let us get some more administrative procedures in place that would make this process a little easier and get some automation
Sure.
in place and then revisit it in the winter sometime in January.
Yeah, and we talked about, since we did confirm that tickets were down last year and maybe not managed the right way, this would give the chief time to really
Yeah.
have an opinion on it.
I was
So-
thinking more policy and strategy
Yeah.
than I was
Mhm.
execution this
Yep.
year, next year.
Yeah.
I just,
Yeah.
I think in the long term,
Oh, yeah, philosophically, I definitely
right,
agree
I
with
mean,
you. Yeah.
I know there's alcohol on the streets, but I still think it's important.
know, but nobody wants to talk about that.
Well, I think we have. I think we talked about a lot.
I thought we're talking about parking,
I know,
but,
my, I know. I made most of it.
well, if you'd like an agenda about
No,
drinking
I just-
on Water Street, we'd be
I just
happy to
feel
accommodate that.
I understand people want, it's great to have it all codified, and the thing, when I looked at this, what really jumped out at me, as I said, was that these go back to before the,
Right.
so many of the sidewalks were put in, was in, 2000, early 2000s.
So the process for updating, when you haven't updated for decades, is going to be lengthy and painful. And, it's, but I think it's important, if only because we're at some weird risk at this point where we have signs that assert things that don't have a basis in STC rules or approvals or even town ordinance. So I definitely get it. And I agree with you. Given the choice between people walking down Water Street drunk and giving tickets, I'm with you. But right now we're just trying to get through so that we have a bucket that is for ordinance, a bucket that is for STC, and a bucket that is for, let's talk about these over time, right?
Correct. So then the other related item to that would be the fee imposed on non-paid tickets. Currently, the process is a letter goes out when they're not paid. In the past, various people have followed up with the individual. Towns do escalate that price if not paid on time. Back to the lack of automation and having a current process, our recommendation is to leave it as is and let the chief get in a little more into the
Sure.
process of it and then come back with recommendation. But
Presumably automation makes that
yes,
a lot easier, right? Is that right? I mean, yeah, right.
Can I ask, where do we stand on people being able to pay parking tickets online or not?
that would be the automation piece.
So that's
So
not
that'll
gonna happen.
all be tied together.
I think it is, I think the chief is looking at ways to do that. I assume there are companies that have.
So some do have automated, but the idea.
Sorry.
The idea would be to automate it to the extent where it would just be online. So they get the ticket, they go home, log in, and then just take care of it right there.
Is that where it's a handheld by the officer, CSO? or
There's
that
all
kind of-
different variations. It's long and convoluted,
Thank you.
but there are options out there.
Cool.
And I just wanted to say, our goal is not to ticket people.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
Yes.
our goal.
But the ticket helps change the behavior. So, so the last item on this particular tab that I just wanted to raise, and this came up multiple times in the actually past studies as well as the recent conversations with folks, that even with the left turn, no left turn onto Chapel Street, there is a blind spot there if big cars are parked at the end of Water Street trying to make that left. So again, measured, we're not in actually compliance there. The current line to allow parking is 7 feet from the crosswalk. It's supposed to be 20. So we're gonna take a look at that. It unfortunately takes away a park, at least part of a spot, if not more.
Interesting.
But it will help visibility both, post the May and October timeframe. So.
I mean, I think of that crosswalk by you and by Star, where we park right up to the.
Yeah,
to the
this
crosswalk.
one we've talked about.
And it's like,
A-
it's
and
mayhem.
The hard thing is the police are directing people the right way,
Right.
but it's a herd going across and cars are parked right on that. So then people are forced to walk on the street
Yeah.
to get onto the sidewalk. So that would be another area where we give up parking, but it would, and that's in the recommendations would be, do we seek an exception of the 20-foot rule to go to a 10-foot rule, with the state? So you have wider swath for people to
Right,
get through,
right.
or do we just stick with the 20? So
Yeah,
that'll
that-
be in the,
And that seems like a perfect example of why this is so important, because if somebody were to get hurt, and I could just imagine the legal foray.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
and then I just want to go into the other tab as well. So the last page for those that have the physical. So prohibited in certain areas. That's the one I just talked about, 20 feet. There's some hydrant signs that aren't aligned with the town ordinance and the state ordinance. The other one here was there's an ordinance that allows 1843 that allows the town council to prohibit, limit parking on a temporary basis in line with the chief's recommendations. There is no time frame on that, and I don't think it was intended to be open-ended. The good example is the request that came in for the Old Town Road across from Three Sisters to put no parking there. It went up last summer. It's still up. It never got into any ordinance. So I think the 1843 should just needs to be updated to say either in conjunction with the state, because the town can't do certain things. And then as well as putting a temporary, how long can temporary parking be? So
Great.
signs we talked about, temporary no parking. Forget what this one is, shall be posted. Oh, that's the temporary as well. And then overnight parking. So that came up at the last meeting, came up in focus groups. Currently, there is no town ordinance or state ordinance specifically around a flat overall, no overnight parking. The state did approve the area from Deadeyes to Payne's Dock to be a no overnight parking area. It is currently not signed that way. It's currently signed as no 24-hour parking, which makes it obviously hard to enforce. So that needs to be revisited as well.
Okay.
So
And is that like that all the way up past the hog pen?
It
I'm
is,
trying to
it's,
remember
right.
what those
it's,
signs
it's the west side of
Yep.
Ocean
Yep.
from basically the hog pen all the way to Payne's Dock.
Gotcha. Okay. So if, gotcha, okay.
And then the last thing, and I see some. No, the west side.
The.
There is no parking signs along the hog pen on the east side, but on the west side where there's rocks and that currently has signage there, no 24-hour parking. You're allowed to park there, but not for 24 hours, which kind of doesn't make sense.
Bill.
Neil, did
Yeah.
the state, you said the state put in no overnight parking?
No, they haven't.
All right, right. 'Cause
So
originally-
they approved no overnight parking on that section. It's documented. However, the signs that went up don't say no overnight parking. It was
when was that? Do you know when? that was?
1990.
Okay, because we had when the high speed came in down at Payne's, the town had went to the traffic commission to ask that there would be, 2-hour parking or whatever it might be. And it got rejected for whatever reason. And then at that time, but what the state said, there's a state statute that says you cannot park 24 hours at any time. And that's why the 24-hour was put up.
So again, this is where some of the nuance, like
Yeah.
the state
That's really.
could be
helpful.
wrong how they approved it, right? This traffic commission approved it specifically in quotes, no overnight parking, but the signs are different. So maybe at some point someone said, you can't even have the no overnight parking sign, and this was the solution, but then never went back to the state to rescind the current ordinance. Because it's on the books
You're saying on the books, the state said there's no overnight parking.
for that period, for that stretch.
Yeah.
And then the town put up signs slightly different. Yeah. And then the last one for taxi folks, and Sue Ann, I saw out walking when I was doing some work. So currently there are taxi stands in several places, but it's only documented that the Harbor Side, which actually no longer exists, and the National have dedicated taxi stand parking. So my recommendation is just to update where the other parking is currently, which is at in front of the Narragansett. It's in here in the detail how far it is from the corner,
Right.
the town lot, as well as Ballards. So those three aren't documented anywhere, and Sue Ann felt those were still needed, although they don't sit at Ballards. It helps them to turn around. So, and I did ask, being that the parking is, now housed for taxis downtown, across from the Harbor Side, do we still need the National dedicated 2 spots, which in the ordinance is 40 feet? And she felt that it was helpful because obviously the volume of people going to the National, but it also is the surf as well. That's their, navigation point. So my recommendation will be just to update the current to reflect those other sites.
And Sue Ann, and I'm sure Judy, when we did those 2 spaces, it wasn't cabs were actually waiting, one was usually there, and it was always open so they could have a drop off. So they weren't parked in the road. So that's why the 2 spaces were there. So one could be sitting, but if a car came in, they dropped off. And they
At
wouldn't-
Ballards. Are you
This
talking?
was- No, I'm in front of the National.
Oh, yeah. It's still there.
Yeah.
And it's 40 feet is
Right,
the.
but they don't usually both sit, in other words, they usually leave one. And so another cab can come in and drop
Yeah.
off, so they're not blocking up the road.
Yeah, however they manage it is fine. I wanted to make sure everyone felt it was still needed.
Right, but the important thing is that it's run that way, because if you had 2 cars sitting there and a cab was in the road,
Right.
it defeats the purpose.
Right.
Right.
So good call out. I mean, if that means, I don't want to be the document police, but if that's the intent, the unintended consequence of not following that is you create traffic problems with the cabbie trying to drop people off. So good point.
Judy? Come on up.
We're at the National. green light. At the National, there's a little sliver triangular piece that mopeds like to park in because it's the perfect size. But it's right behind the two spaces that we park in. So when we come around the corner to pull up in front of the National, we can't because that little area is not saying that there isn't any parking, and it's a real problem.
Good call out. So that's technically because you have to have distance from the corner. It should be no parking
There's a
behind you.
space and it's colored in, but it doesn't say, I think somebody did finally go and put no parking there. I think it was me. I have yellow paint. I have a no parking sign that I really love to use. I use it down at Ballard's on the wall. I go around, I use it at Payne's. It comes out really nice.
So you're the one who painted the no parking on the retaining wall down at
Where?
Ballard's?
No, actually, somebody else did
Oh,
that. I
okay.
only put
All right.
one. I put one. Somebody else put a bunch of.
So Chief, that, if we want to add that to the list to take a look at, I think that makes sense, Judy.
Great. I had one question if we're on the.
Mary's up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mary. I didn't
I
see
just
you.
snuck right
I'm
in here.
self-absorbed. I'm
I
sure.
had two comments about parking. One of them is right away at the beginning, you said no parking on either side of Chapel Street.
Yep.
What about church?
Um,
Since I watch it
Oh.
on a constant basis,
Yeah.
I know that it is completely parked all the way up to the corner during the two masses.
on their lot or on the street?
On the street.
Okay.
Yeah. I
Interesting.
just letting you know that
Yeah,
that is
it's
a,
helpful.
if they didn't do that, they wouldn't be able to attend because the parking lot's chock-a-block full.
Right.
So just bringing that up.
Good call out. When I
That's
talked to
helpful.
the priest or Father Joe about his lot being something we could use during the week for parking. And I addressed when I
Somebody
was a
used.
kid, it was a one-way. During church hours, it was one-way traffic. Yeah, it was.
When?
When I was a kid.
Oh, when
We-
you were a kid.
yeah,
Yeah, that was
yeah.
a long time.
But
Yeah.
so, how old do you think I am? No. But I specifically said, is that a concern around your parking? And he said, no, we have no problems with parking. Now, I don't go to church, so I don't know.
Okay. Since I see it every Sunday
Okay,
now, just letting you know.
right.
And the
Right.
second parking issue that I've noticed, if anyone goes to Charleston Beach to watch the sunset
Mm.
and you want to park on Coast Guard Road, like we always used to, as of 2 years ago, there all of a sudden are no parking signs.
Yeah, you know
and
what?
down.
And I missed going down there and I
And-
remember
and-
that.
Why is this no parking? It's wide and there's parking and it's always been parking and that's a public accessible beach. What is that? When did those signs come up? That can't be state sanctioned. They just
Well,
appeared.
so that's a town road, so we have the rights to do it, but
Okay.
there's nothing on record about that, so.
Okay, just
uh,
wondering about
I
that
do remember when
because
those came up, right? That
just
came up when
like months
Chief,
ago. They just,
well, they came up when Chief Moynihan started and they had police living down there. But I can say from doing deliveries down that road, often you can't get through the road because people park on both sides and
but you
You've
should
got
be able to park on
fishermen.
the one side because to
there
access.
must be
the
a
beach.
solution. But
Yeah.
I
there
will
has to
say,
be.
I think they probably couldn't get home and decided to, I
Just
have no idea
pick
what
up
the
signs.
process was.
But in any event, it's very unfriendly because they have these, we took some people to see the sunset and the police were like, yelling at everyone on the beach to move their cars. And I was like, that's kind of not very Block Islandy. And there wasn't a real reason for it, but I've just never saw.
No,
this
no,
done
it's a
before.
good call out,
Yeah.
so maybe your team will have an
Yeah.
idea of.
I mean,
the
if there's a
discussion.
reason for it on one side, okay, but there's gotta be some kind of parking. It's a beach.
Okay, I just figured that all of the
Thank you.
town access, shore access roads were on a later schedule.
I'm sorry, say that again?
The town access roads, none of them are on here. I thought they were on a later.
No, I didn't go down every dirt road. I was
Okay.
focused on all the,
I'm talking about like public access roads that are a problem.
Yeah, like, give me an
Like
example, like
Mansion.
Coast Guard Road.
Like
Yeah, no, I
where-
did not do,
You know,
I did not do any of the dirt roads.
because that's, well, I think we talk as if Water Street's the only problem. And it doesn't bother me because I'm off the road. But I know my neighbors have had people parking on their land. I know there were signs down there that,
So Martha,
Were
this
made
is
up.
where I get very frustrated. You've been on the parking
No.
committee meeting with me.
I was,
And you never share ideas until now. I get it. I just would appreciate when you're engaged with the group, that you bring up ideas at the time so we can seek solutions. It's fine. Your idea is right. And most of the time I agree with you, but this is not governing. We're supposed to be solution driven, not why something doesn't work. So just going forward, when working with me, please spend the time in advance and not always bring it up.
I've been to, I think, one meeting that I've been informed.
We've had 3 meetings.
Well, I have not been
Okay,
told of them, so
because
let's
you
not
did-
talk about working
Okay.
together. I thought that was coming later. I thought that was
Okay.
a whole lot, because none of them are on here.
Okay.
And lots of them are problems.
But you've never raised why this.
But what we're working on here is, that is an item that we have to address.
I
right?
totally
Yeah.
agree. But my point
Yeah.
is Martha
I-
is a great grandstander on these things and it
No,
drives
come
me
on.
insane.
What-
When she's been at a meeting where she said, hey, Neil, are we gonna do the dirt roads? And I would have said, hey, great idea. Oh,
I
let's-
Can I
always see
ask
this
a
when
question
it's
about
done. Let's
the,
be
um,
honest here.
Let's talk about what we're
Let's
gonna
do it on a
Yeah.
second
Can
tier,
I
that's
ask a
fine.
question
you,
about
please.
the
Let's ask.
cleaning
Yep.
the roads? I know I saw it in here somewhere, and now I can't
Like-
find it. Water Street,
Yes,
Mike Shea has a necessity to clean the roads, right? We had talked about having signs that
they're already
say,
up. So
Oh, they are?
yeah, they're on the street.
sorry, I
So
didn't
when
even notice
And
that.
they're noted in this, so they basically
Guys.
screwed them at some point onto the bottom of the sign. And
Oh,
it says, because
thank you.
Mary Ann said the same thing to me, what do we want to do? I said, they're already up.
Great,
So.
thanks. I'm sorry.
Nice
I
job,
didn't even
Mary Ann.
notice.
I didn't believe him. And so what I did was I walked home that way.
Yeah.
He was right.
Thank you, Mike Shea.
Yeah. So the only further area of that, now we're down the rabbit hole, is how do we enforce that? And the chief's gonna be chatting with Mike about it because some of the earlier restaurants open early. There's a time to close the street. If people are parked, you go around it. Are they getting a ticket? So that's also, has to be
Yep.
confirmed.
Great.
Great.
All right, we can stop talking about parking.
Is that it? So let's talk
So-
about
Next steps.
next. Go ahead, Bill.
I just had one question, Neil. I noticed the parking on the left on from Chapel onto Water, we're set with that because it's the ordinance already. Chapel Street onto Water Street. the left
No
turn.
left turn. Yeah.
Now, Water Street, did I read something about from Water Street onto Chapel? Is there any?
No.
Okay, thank you.
No, so what happened was that came up in the ideation with the groups and it got pulled on just as to give clarity to tonight's item, but it's not.
Thank you.
So we're gonna have a packet of STC requests. And we're gonna have a packet with proposed ordinance changes. Is that right?
That's
So
correct.
That's,
Yeah.
and we're gonna work with Allison or whomever on a map. Does that make sense, Mary Ann? Or work with Mary Ann, whatever this, or Millie or whatever the source of that is. Oh, okay. I was just having a hard time picturing for me.
I was simply saying, you're going to have so many feet, so many feet, so many feet. And that would be very helpful for me. That's generally what
I see.
that would be
Gotcha.
next step.
Gotcha.
I didn't want to just be.
Yeah, yeah.
Narrative.
Yeah, yeah. The other thing is, Martha, can you talk to Mary Ann about Mansion Road and any other shore access roads? About what we might want to do there? Beacon Hill, I just push them off with my pickup truck, so it hasn't been a problem.
Andy's
right?
Way becoming.
Andy's Way.
at times.
Yeah,
Yeah, because they were all.
yeah, but I think it's an important here. That's my point. I think, yeah, I think I think it would be helpful if you would work with Marianne and the chief on those. I mean, Andy's Way is a spot that gets
Especially now with the walkway.
Mansion
Well,
Road.
I'm happy to
Yeah.
do the dirt roads, and I mean, we've got a format, so I will jump on the dirt
Wonderful.
roads for the next iteration.
Terrific. Anything else? Thank you for your work.
Yeah.
I won't speak for the group, but so Molly, Marianne and I have been talking a lot about signage. There's, what? Oh, and there's going to be signs going up at the beach access points along Crescent Beach. Marianne can, if you wants to see a copy of it, Marianne has it. They are basically talking about sort of the obvious, respectful expectations of people, meaning carry in, carry out, stay on the paths, stay off the dunes. I mean, there's sort of the obvious Block Island stuff that not every tourist understands it to be obvious. And I think they're very tasteful and simple. It's sort of a test, right? Let's see if the signs work. They're going to be at the entrance points, low down, so they're not big signs and, changing everybody's character. On the messaging, there is an RFP that was issued. I think the return date is the April 21st. And the idea of messaging, as we've talked about in a couple of meetings, is really trying to, with a test to communicate to people coming to the island about sort of the town rules and regulations in a nice, positive, island-friendly way. So try not to use the word no and don't, but make sure that people understand what the rules are on Block Island, a la to the earlier conversation by Martha about open containers. That, what are the rules, and tell people that in a nice way. Those RFPs, they're pretty much the agencies that would run a test, and we'll get those RFPs back on the 21st. And from there on, see where we go. See what responses we get. Anything else, Molly or Marianne?
Any questions, comments?
How many locations roughly? Marianne?
I didn't bring my signage file. It's about 12, maybe it's 16 up to that many. We have a bunch of different signs. We have signage going to the beach. We also have signage about open containers that we're putting in about a dozen places in the island, strategic places based on the discussion with the groups. We also have signage about under age 21. Alcohol is not allowed, or is illegal for anyone under the age of 21. And the chief will be meeting with individual restaurant owners, and we're putting those up. We've also had some shops that said they'll be happy to take an 8.5 by 11 of either one of the alcohol signs, and they'll put it up in their place of business. One was the Star Market and things like that. And then the beach signs, we have the beach signs, we have about 16 access point beach signs, and they took about like what Spence said about no alcohol, leash your dog, carry in, carry out, stay off the dunes. And we went through a number of iterations of different signs, and I think folks like them, and we'll see what happens this year.
Thank you guys so much for your work.
Could
on
we potentially use the Chamber of Commerce to get those out to all the members? Because it'd be great for me to have at the end. Every once in a while, people walk out with a cocktail, they jump in a cab, and if they saw a sign about no public, it may be helpful. So if they were up in inns and B&Bs, it could be good.
Yes, so we are including, we're making 8.5 by 11s that we're giving to the realtors that have books that they put in the rental homes.
Okay.
Of the open containers and the 21 and under. The chamber currently has a sign. I'm sure someone here can talk to the executive director of the
Yes.
chamber.
Well, I meant more just like from,
I'll have John take care of that. You know a guy, John.
I meant it more just instead of having people come and ask for them, pushing them out. So that way you know, it just makes it easier. Great.
Fantastic. Thank you, guys. Amy, it's warrant time. Oh, isn't it? What did I miss? Oh, motor
Motor
vehicles for
vehicles
hire.
for
Sorry,
hire.
guys. Sorry, Brad. I didn't mean to give you a heart attack. Hi, Judy.
The beach access signs, where do you put it, where are you gonna put them?
As they're, we're gonna put 'em on both spots, leaving the beach. There's some already leaving the beach, as they're leaving the beach.
I've
and-
always thought
And then we're putting them as people walk down the trails to the beach.
that when people are coming from town and going to the beach, a lot of times they continue along Dodge and go around and walk that way. Why people walk on the road to go to the beach, I don't know, but is there the spot right between the dory and the beachcomber? Is that public access? If there was a sign right there that said beach access,
That-
that a lot of people might go down that roadway, no?
That was on our list. And I believe the discussion we had was where would we mount it? Because that was the one that was complicated, because that is beach access, but it's not, there's not space that the town owns. So that was the complicated one. So
Okay,
for the time being, I'm not sure where the sign would go there, but
but the large opening afterwards, after you go around the corner, that
Mhm.
first large opening, is
Right.
that a spot?
that's on our list
Great.
too. Mhm.
Square?
And can we get down the one, the first beach access? Can we get taken down that first post that says beach access? It
That
goes
one is not on
over
our
the dune.
list.
The very first sign that people see when they walk down Cornet Road for beach access is a path that goes over the dune. I don't understand why that. I don't understand that.
I know where she's referring to.
Right,
Yes, you
and so-
do. Yes, you do.
So we had a
And
long
If
list.
we-
Every
No.
town manager before you and every one of you is.
And if we do need a town council, I think the council would probably support that decision unanimously, I think.
Yeah.
So if you need it, but
Judy has a chainsaw in addition to some yellow paint.
Mike Shea has a bigger chainsaw. No,
Terrific. Thank you, guys. Item 13, discuss and act on motor vehicles for hire license items. I just put A in there, Brad and other taxi drivers, because we're likely to be working and would like to work with you on ensuring that as many as possible, if not as a requirement, are taking more than just cash. We talked about that at our last meeting, but I didn't want to I wanted to keep it on the agenda for our purposes of ongoing conversation. So we have, darn it, why is this not working? There we go. So we have to renew taxi licenses. Motion would be in order to renew New Shoreham taxi licenses for the 2023-2024 license year for Victoria Carson, Judy Clark, what's that? Oh, yeah, sorry, Mal. Should have given you time. For Victoria Carson, Judy Clark, John Cullen, Gloria Hall Daubert, Charles Douglas, Judy Dulac, Tom Durden, Mark Emanuel, Patrick Evans, Fiona Fitzpatrick, Nathaniel Gaffett, Richard Gann, John Grant, Ann Hall, Jeffrey Hall, Deborah Hart, Monica Hall-Shea, Fred Leader, Vin McAloon, Tim McCabe, Ruth McTeague, David Milner, Christine Monjay, Brian Neville, Frank Nicastro, Christopher O'Neill, Kathy Payne, James Rondinone, David Schaller, Sue-Ann Shaw, Michael Shea, and Richard Trethewey, all pending receipt of appropriate licensing fees and paperwork, and with the stipulation that drivers state rates to passengers prior to departure.
second.
Oh, did I get that right? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it. A motion, make a motion to renew New Shoreham charter bus licenses for 2023, 2024 for Patrick Evans and Bill McComb, pending receipt of appropriate paperwork and licensing fees.
Second.
All those in favor indicate by, yes?
I don't know.
The bus license.
To just drive the school
So
bus?
Interstate, like, no.
Tour buses.
Oh, yeah.
Or-
Weddings
or
use
something.
them sometimes, groups who are getting tours. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it. I would make a motion to accept the New Shoreham taxi waiting list. These are in descending order: Jeffrey Ernst, Jordan Ryan, Patrick Tengwall, Stephen Papa, Terrence Smith, Nancy Pike, Scott Gibbons, Alexis McCabe, Alicia McQueenie, Michael McQueenie, Jesse Daubert, Maria Mott, and Joe DiMatteo. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it. Those are adopted. And I think that's it, guys. Wonderful. Sorry to get you so excited, an item early, Amy, but now we have the warrant.
So you have the warrant.
Yes.
So
Yes, we do.
most of the content, as we know, is fairly standard year to year. There are 3 items that are unique to this May's discussion. And those are, starting on page 1, the 3 borrowing questions. Do you want to focus on those first or
Sure.
start at the top? Okay. So right after the introduction, you have the first, which is the request for approval for the town to borrow up to $1 million to complete the renovation and construction of units at the Thomas property. It's Plat 8, Lot 128. And this is in addition to the 1.5 million that was authorized in 2019. Questions or move on to the next?
Go ahead. I wasn't going to do questions. We've had hearings on it, but if people, okay. We had the hearings on the budget and the capital plan, but that's totally fine if you'd like to speak.
This is the first time I spent $1 million on proposed
No, it's not, but please, you know.
I have a couple of questions. First one is, what will the borrowing do to our, our debt services? I don't know if that should be at the end or whatever,
No,
all 3.
It's perfectly fine.
And then I had a separate question.
It might actually be easier to talk about that question in the context of the first 2, which are both related to town debt. So let me just.
Great.
Can we preview the first 3 and then go back? Okay.
True.
So the second question is also a town borrowing authorization, and that's $2.1 million for the acquisition of Plat 16, Lot 3-3, which is where the Old Island Pub currently sits. And then the third question is authorization to borrow up to $3.1 million. And this is specific to the water company, and the proposal is that that be borne by the water ratepayers. It's an obligation of the town, but the repayment would come through the water fund. That is in conjunction with a $5.6 million project approximately, and we're looking at a 45% USDA grant to offset that. So those 3 together all impact the town's debt levels. So we're looking at $6.2 million. The town's current debt capacity is just over $50 million, and that's set by state statute. That's 3% of the town's assessed value. Our current outstanding debt is 26 million. we have additional authorized but unissued debt of $10.44 million for the school and then $8 million for broadband. So we are, with those two issuances, up around the $43 million mark. Adding these three issuances does start to move us closer to that $50 million cap. Some of those borrowings are not actually applicable to the cap, some of that 26 million. But historically, we've had so much capacity that we don't actually parse them out. So we talk about them in aggregate. Legally, there is a little bit of differential there specifically related to the sewer bonding. But we are starting to approach that cap. The cap will increase. It increases every year as the grand list grows, and we anticipate that it will shift again with revaluation when that is completed. We're starting to get, I know I'm a little off field, but it's
No,
coming back.
It's very helpful.
We're starting to get some preliminary numbers back from revaluation, and that growth related to revaluation will be somewhere between 5 and 14%. So we'll pick up some additional capacity in terms of debt carrying in that exercise as our grand list increases.
What about items that are falling off over time?
Yeah,
That's
we-
because it's that there's two parts of that equation.
We don't have material debt coming off until 2026.
Mm-hmm.
And so our principal repayment is pretty consistent for the next 10 years, roughly about $3 million.
Great. Is that helpful, Bill?
Is that?
I guess my question would be, that is very helpful. What is the 50 is, and this is because I don't understand this,
Yeah.
this question. The 50 is the max.
The
right?
50 is a statutory limit, yes.
What is the, we all have limits on our credit cards and we don't go to them. What is that you're comfortable with, that limit where we are? Because, there are other things that will come up and opportunities and so forth. I just think we have to kind of look at that.
Sure.
Sure. And at that point, it becomes a matter of priority because you are starting to crowd out what could be possible in the short or midterm. I would say once you're up above that 35 to $40 million mark on a $50 million cap, you start to preclude other options. And so it's a pretty valid discussion about how are you going to fit the known and unknown needs in the short term. So we're certainly starting to be in that range where those conversations are appropriate. But there is no guideline, and the answer is different for every community.
Terrific.
When you get through into the rest of the content of the warrant, the sequencing is the same. We haven't shifted things around. We're starting with some reports on the current year and then moving into the annual capital and operating budget. Once that is adopted, we go through the levying of taxes. And then everyone's favorite parts, if they stay, about borrowing, refinancing, expending grant funds, some of the things that actually come up in a relevant way for the council throughout the year, enabling us to do our financial business. But I'm happy to take questions.
Well, I don't have a question, but I will say that this plain language column is really helpful to me. I think it's a really great addition because it's just. Are there any questions from the council?
So I always ask you this question, but what is the reason why we can't put the annual operating budget first? Can we?
You can.
I mean, could we reorder the warrant so that everybody doesn't burn up all their energy on the bond issues, that they pay attention to the operating budget too?
And even in recent history, that was the pattern, that we actually did all borrowing after, often at the end, I think. And that was the preference at the time to switch those around, but it's always at the council's discretion to reorder as you see fit.
Well, I think, it's only been, was it only last year it was shifted?
No, it was, I think it was 2018, 19.
Or was that long ago? But I think what we saw was that, there was some hope that people would stay for the operating budget. And that didn't work. Basically, people stay for whatever they're interested in. Yeah. And I'm not gonna give my charter thing again, but. I'll save that
I mean,
for
I
another
think we should
meeting.
go back to selling cupcakes too, but like if
Well,
we're gonna make you all stay. but,
Mid-break.
No,
Um,
they did, they,
but
they,
I would very much like to reorder the warrant.
With the intent that then people will stay longer.
Well,
that
with
your-
the intent that the operating budget is important.
Yeah.
And I've gotten a lot of questions on the operating budget from people who listened to it, but did not show up to ask any questions. And I think it's important. I think it's important. That's when our department heads get to, if they would like to, talk about what they're doing. You know, I mean, we don't do 2 and 3 night long financial town meetings any longer. So I don't think we're asking a lot for people to pay attention to where their money is going. Am I wrong?
And was there a discussion of why it changed? I mean, it makes complete sense, Molly.
I think we might have had a town manager who changed it.
We did, but there were some, it was almost the opposite feeling, but sentiments changed that the operating budget wasn't getting attention because people were only there to answer the big questions. And therefore we were almost rushing through the meat of what I consider the work to get to those specific questions. I don't think there's a right answer or a wrong answer. And so.
We could split the difference and sandwich it in between
Well, that's-
the bond issues.
well, the way,
Um,
I think, Amy, if, it would have been the 3 bond issues you talked about are the ones that would be moved to behind. If we went back to the previous.
I'm just gonna
format.
say from many years of being town moderator, like, it's discouraging. I'm not sure if there's a way to prevent people from just leaving, but I think all parts of this are important. I'd like to find a way to reorder it so that we could encourage voters to stay.
Well, that's it's really simple. It's just those 3 items go back to after the operating budget and we're back where we were before. There was, was some hope that people would pay more attention to the huge items because it was a feeling, at least I personally felt, that we were just bonding and nobody was thinking about it. And I know this came up when the dump road was paved and people were asking, well, when did we approve this? When did we vote on this? When did this happen? Is it a town financial meeting if you paid any attention? And I talked to everybody like that. So it's not just, don't anybody take personal offense at it. But it was really, it's gotten to that point where I feel like $1 million last year was last year the school? The 10 million, they just. What,
Yeah.
No, I'm gonna take the
had no
time to point out
conversation.
that Kim Gaffett had quite a few questions. Thank you, Kim.
The-
Kim Gaffett was the only person who
Yeah.
asked any questions about a $10 million bond issue. So maybe the voters just have a high threshold for paying. I don't know.
I don't think, I just think they all figure it's a done deal and that they're just not going to be bothered. And
So
it's
on,
very discouraging.
so on the question before us, do you want to reorder? I would yield to you guys. I don't have strong feelings about this.
Well, this didn't work. This didn't make people pay more attention. Everybody ran home after these items were
Will
done.
reordering it, can we make the motion to move the warrant forward? And then you can reorganize it?
You would propose an amendment and you would pass it as amended, and we would publish
Okay.
without further voting.
All right, I would make a motion to move the 3 bonding items to a place directly after the operating budget. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Well, hold on.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, I'm
No, no, sorry. I didn't see. I was reading.
I'd just like to ask a very general question. I'm trying desperately to match up Plat 6, Lot 3-3 with something on the capital budget and I can't. Can we state what that piece of property is?
Oh, yeah, it's Old Island Pub.
Old Island Pub. That, I looked that up in the vision appraisal this afternoon, and it matches up perfectly with the condo that Beth and Renwick Tweedy, I think that's his name, owned. What am I missing?
I don't know.
Great, two smart people agree.
But I think that might be unit 3, not sub-lot 3. That's where I arrived.
So let us look at that. I got it off the appraisal. that
It'll
was
take
given.
me too long to find the plat.
So I understand we need to look at that, but what we have to decide, thank you, David, we have to decide, what I need to know is if that is not accurate,
We need to change it.
We need to
We're
change
looking
it.
up now.
I'm glad, thank you, David.
I guess, given your answer that it's the Old Island Pub, that hasn't been, as, you know, as Bill learned, you're sensitive to things that have and haven't been discussed publicly. And I don't know that Old Island Pub has been discussed publicly.
It was only discussed publicly once at a meeting this week because we were approached after the budget was put together with a very tight timeline.
So my general question, how is the public going to walk into the financial town meeting with adequate information adequate information to make informed decision as to what the public use is, et cetera? I think that's a real concern.
Absolutely. Yeah. I certainly from my perspective, am working on a document that describes this transaction for distribution with, I think with our warrant documents and I'll presumably probably send it to the Block Island Times, send it to, whatever posted on ClerkBase, but yes, I agree. So I don't think we had a calendar issue that squeezed us. And timing issues with the seller. The seller had a very an understandably rigid timeline. So it is not ideal, but we're going to do our best.
So was that the closed session you had Monday?
That was the closed session. And then when we went into open, we described what it was and walked through the vote and the motion that was made.
Does anybody know whether that actually showed up on the videotape on YouTube?
I have
actually
no
looked
idea.
for it and couldn't find
Nope,
it.
so that's where you
But it-
it dropped and then
Yeah,
you
it
did
did,
it.
it dropped, and then I went back on and created another new meeting, so there should be a separate meeting.
I'll look.
But there should be a second meeting.
Thank you, David. All good questions, as always. So we're basically standing at ease to figure out that number.
Oh, Bill, I couldn't find it.
Hey, Bill.
I have it confirmed, Bella. I'll let them separately confirm. While they do that, I could use a little input, actually. I have a question that I'm going to pose to you, which might really go to Martha. Putting it directly after the operating budget separates the operating budget from the tax levy resolution.
Okay.
And I feel like those should belong together, but
We-
maybe it's not as important as,
We used to do the tax levy because it's so god awful incomprehensible at the very end,
Okay, so nobody else is worried about
because that was
separating
just,
those two.
it's just a pro forma thing that nobody can understand.
It's very important.
I know. I know.
Do you recommend putting that someplace else? Or not changing?
No, I just want to be clear about putting the borrowing questions in between the budget and the levy.
That's per annum.
I know it's painful.
When everybody stumbles through.
I don't see-
What's, the one-
Everybody but you.
Bill, thank you.
It may not be for this meeting, but I know we had approved 1.5 for the Thomas property, for the town manager's house, and for the to be done. And that was for the whole property.
Wait, that's
being
back too.
complete.
I gotta go to
Obviously,
the
that
appraisal
didn't happen.
document.
We're coming back at $1 million on top of that. Is there going to be something, or will you be able to have something that if that does not pass, what will be done as far as completion? If it's just the
Oh, so
Thomas
this is
house,
right.
is there, how much funds is left? And of those funds, is there enough funds to complete? You know, what is the game plan outside?
Yeah, I would ask Mary Ann or Tom.
Oh, I'm
Uh,
sorry,
uh,
what was the question?
What's left from the initial 1.5?
About $800,000.
So my. can I repeat
Please,
my
yes.
question? So my question was, you know, we put 1.5 million to the voters. There were no drawings and so forth at the time. It was, here's the money we're gonna end up with the town manager's house and the Thomas house for the $1.5 million. Obviously, that didn't come through. We still have 800 left. We're asking for another million on top of that, is if you decide to do the project expand or whatever it might be. Should that not pass, that $1 million, with the $800,000 that is left, which was the original, is there a plan to complete what can be completed with the $800,000 with just the Thomas house itself?
So what I would do would regroup with Tom, and we've already started having that discussion as to what we can do. There's going to be now, there's the town manager's house, what I call the current ranch, and then there's a third piece of building that we're going to build. So in the end, there'll be 3 different buildings on that parcel of land. The Thomas Ranch will demo and rebuild it, and then there'll be the third piece of property. There's a couple of options we could have based on what the funding is and the budget is for the two additional buildings. We can build the new one and leave the Ranch Thomas, or we can use the funds to renovate the Ranch Thomas and go from there. Most likely, we'll probably renovate the Ranch Thomas because that building needs some work. And we probably will be able to do that for about the 800,000.
So just so I get this correctly, so if that motion should fail, the $1 million to do addition, what we did, then what, the 1.5 million, which was appropriated back in 2019, will be enough funds to do the house, we identified as the town manager house, and to redo the Thomas house as we get funds.
Correct.
Thank you.
The only difference is that, it was my understanding, and I wasn't here at the time, that the intention was eventually, even when I look back at the documentation, going back to that financial town meeting at 2018, 2019, the year's not important, that there would be ultimately, I think 3 or 4 units in the new piece. This will reduce the units. And there'll still be the town manager's house, and the second unit would have just 2 units. Ultimately, what we'd like to do is the town manager's house and 4 units. There'll be 3 2-bedroom units and 1 1-bedroom unit. What we've been hearing and discussing extensively in the last couple of years is the need for affordable housing for police officers, our town employees, firefighters, and then the general public. So I think this goes a long way to start addressing some of those.
I understand. I think it's important for the public to realize that it isn't that there wasn't enough funds that we allocated the 1.5 to do what we did with the Thomas, but this is an expansion to that project outside of that. So if that should be rejected, the Thomas house in a smaller format, 2 apartments, not 3, whatever, and the town manager's house would be completed with the existing funds that we approved. Thank you.
Sven just showed me a map that says it is 63-3,
Yes.
right? Gotcha. So this is accurate.
Yeah, the other parcel is 63-2-3.
Right. Gotcha. Terrific. Thank you. Please, yes. Come. Got to come up to the microphone, Tom. Thank you.
There's a rumor that
Might want to lift that microphone up.
How's that?
Perfect.
Bravo. There's a rumor that plat 6, lot 3 is being considered for a civic center. Is that true?
A civic center? Community center?
A community center.
I think that in the conversations with the Gaffets, they have I think they would like to see at least part of the building used for a community purpose. I don't think that to me means a community center, a sort
right.
of.
Because I just wanted to say.
You know,
that,
it might take the form of, I don't know, fitness center. It might take the form, I'm not sure exactly. We're
Yeah.
gonna have to work on that. But I,
Because unless you did some studies, it seems to me it would have to be retrofitted.
I
fulfill
think no
that
matter
purpose.
what we do, it's gonna have to be retrofitted. I
Yeah.
think, yeah, absolutely, Tom. Yeah.
So that would be another couple million before we're done, probably.
I hope not, but
Okay, thank you.
were you? Right, we have not yet voted, yes. We have a motion before us to switch the order. Are you here to comment on that, Ms. Finance Director?
Just one. So, going back, say, pre-2018, it was actually much further down, just before the shellfish. What?
Which was much.
All of the borrowing questions or any of the borrowing questions in a particular year. Which would actually put it much further back. So if you wanted to split the difference, then right after the operating budget would be a way to keep people for those elements, the borrowings and the budget, and still let them.
So that was the motion before
Yeah,
us, right?
that was the motion before you.
All those in favor, whoops.
That works.
All those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. Now we're on the warrant itself. Are there any other comments, questions? Want to move any sections? That was a good point.
I still have a question about the water. The water is to be borne entirely by the water district. Is that correct?
Yes.
And it's basically capital expenses.
Yes.
So stay with me here. I'm not good at explaining things. I know exactly what I mean, but there are a number of town buildings on town water. The number may not be, I don't know how significant it is in the overall total, but so ultimately only the folks in the water district are paying the cost of what the town buildings would be paying if they weren't exempt. And I think that's not fair.
Follow me for a little bit. Because the costs of those projects are being borne by the water ratepayers. And it's not being levied as a property tax assessment through the property tax billing process. It's an assessment that's actually levied monthly on the bill as the customer infrastructure tax. The town facilities in the district that are customers are bearing those costs
Okay,
in
so
proportion to the rest of the customers of the district.
that's what I didn't get the other day. Thank you.
That's very helpful.
It's not a land thing.
So it's a separate thing. It's a separate way from the way the sewer was paid.
Thank
for.
goodness John
Correct.
Brunig was here to explain that to us.
John, this is why you should always bring Amy.
All right, so just in terms of form of motion here, Millie, do I make a motion to approve this warrant and send it to the financial town meeting?
Yeah, as amended. Right.
So I would make a motion to approve this warrant as amended and forward it to the financial town meeting. Any discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it.
I'm voting in favor, but I'm only voting in favor because everything on this has been voted by the majority of the town council. I was not in an affirmative vote on the 2.1 million. Thanks to Amy, I've now understand the water, so that's not an issue anymore. But there was a majority vote and the issue. These things did carry, and that's why I'm voting in favor.
Thank you, Martha. Item number 15, discuss.
I'm sorry. Amy, nice job.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Amy.
Incredible work.
I don't know if it's possible, but I think if the council is truly behind this, the purchase of the Kappa property, I would try to get a meeting before that and educate people. I mean, if you. believe
I think that's a good
strongly-
idea.
No, this is a good, I'm just
Yeah.
saying because, otherwise I think you stand a good chance of failure. If you truly believe that, and not just what we can do, what there is a plan and so forth. It's a lot of money. It's a short time. We had the same thing happen last year when we did the Champlains. It went through.
This is not the same thing, Bill. I just want to be really careful about that
Okay,
because it's really important. This came to us very recently, very recently. This is not something that had been talked about for months, that had missed its opportunity. It came very recently on a very tight timeline from the seller. It was being actively pursued by other purchasers. So you're absolutely right. We need to figure out a way to do education, but it's not, no one is procrastinated here. No, I know, but it's important in this community, the way that stories evolve. No one is trying to shorten up the timeline for debate. We had a calendar problem and wanted to put this before the voters. That was
That
basically.
message has to be real.
Yes,
And
yeah, I
unfortunately,
agree.
The people in this room are hearing it and the 15 people that watch there, but. I think that
Absolutely.
If you believe me out of heart, and it's a hard sell, and and I think that, if you believe that strongly, I think a lot of legwork needs to be done right away. So exactly, and I think it really needs to be what we will do with it, not, hey, just these, whatever it might be. I think that there's some defined things for the be success.
Mhm.
That's just a.
Thank you.
Can I just add something on that? I just want to say that by moving this forward, so my reasoning for voting in favor of this was that, I mean, when Keith says brief, right? Like you even had a little bit more notice than the rest of the council.
Really.
Very surprised by this. But I see it as an opportunity, right? And the only way it becomes an opportunity is if we move it forward to the voters. So the voters may say, this isn't what we want, right? But what I hear from people is that they do want a gym facility. They do want a fitness center. They do want a community center. They do want they not necessarily affordable, but year-round attainable housing. And this building has space on the third floor for housing. It has 2 very usable floors. It's a new building. It has parking. It has space in the back for an additional building. So it sort of checks a lot of boxes. And if we didn't roll it forward, then our opportunity is gone, right? But we have an incredibly short time to educate the voters on what the property has. But if we said no, you know what, we don't have time, like, forget it, then the voters wouldn't have a chance to even entertain it. And you know what, you're right, in this short time frame, it stands a huge chance of falling on its face. But put it out there, and it's up to the voter. The financial town meeting is about the voters. So if you think this is a great location for a gym and you want a gym and you want to like hear more about this, then you've got to come to the financial town meeting, because you cannot vote on this if you don't come to that meeting. And I think that it's just important to roll these things forward to the voters. Nobody on the council is saying you have to vote for this. I'm not saying you have to vote for this, but I am saying the voters should have their say. That's all.
Terrific. I mean, we've done the warrant, we're on to another agenda item. Well, do you want to speak? I mean, please, we're not,
This is an important thing.
I know
okay?
it is,
And I
but-
understand. And what I'm saying is, I'm trying to make it so successful for you, and I'm agreeing with Molly's saying, but just so you know, the public will turn to you to say, what is the
Right.
plan?
yes,
Okay, and that's the point to that. It could be this or that, but get a concrete defined plan if you want support. That's all.
Yes. Terrific, thank you. Discuss and act on a request from East Earlsball Housing for a waiver of fiber drop connection charges. Jim, do you want to speak to us about that?
Yeah, I think most of you know me. I'm Jim Boomthorne. For probably 12 years, I've managed that wall property as a project to get out of my wife's hair, so she was pleased that I took that part-time job. I think it's pretty straightforward, the letter I sent. I guess I'm just was sort of shocked. Had some conversations with Amy, somewhat appalled by the number that was going to be charged to hook up those 3 buildings. Because I look at my own house and they ran the fiber, what's the box? NIG, NIP, NID. They ran it to my house and I didn't see any charge for it. Seems like they run it to the 513 accessory housing buildings. Don't think there's any charge for that. So I'm just sort of miffed as why the affordable housing, some of the original, I think, affordable housing on the island going back to 1987. I think one of the early tenants, first tenants was, I believe, Fred Benson. Is that correct, Martha? Yeah. So I think the third paragraph of what I put together on behalf of the bed board really pretty much says it all. If you've got the letter, I don't know, it serves any purpose for me to read it, but if you want me to, I will.
No, you don't have to.
So,
So it's a total of $24,000?
yeah, I think it's slightly less than 6 for the 2 smaller buildings or 3 buildings on that property. And then the 8-unit building in the back, I think, is around 12. The exact number is, you probably have it, Amy, but it's in the neighborhood of 24,000 each.
How does this work, Amy? Please, if you don't mind.
And my point is, you made some exceptions already.
Sure. I may give you more than you need, but how it works.
It's better.
So the policy set by the town in this project was that each parcel in financing the entirety of the project would have one drop, one service connection included in the socialized costs. and those costs are assessed ad valorem across the whole property tax base with the land. We did, as a town, make an exception for the 513 apartments to that one drop per parcel policy. And the council agreed that the connections for those qualified documented 513s that have been approved and administered through the building department would also receive a drop that was socialized through those costs. East Rolls Ball does not fit under that umbrella. It's a single parcel with multiple units. They are not condos, so they're not lots of record in the tax rolls. And so they're subject to the individual connection pricing. That pricing is not necessarily set by Surtax. That pricing was agreed to through the RFP process. So it's the same pricing that the town is paying for each of those drops all around the island. It's not unique pricing, it's set contract pricing. And so they're looking for a waiver or an amendment to the policy
Mhm.
that the town has in place.
Go ahead. Sue.
And I know we had to sign up at the beginning to participate in the socialized pricing, right? So if you said no, but then came a year later and said, I want to now get hooked up, you would be charged an amount.
Yes, so anyone who is joining the network after that initial construction is completed, or which is we're finalizing now, is entirely responsible for their own connectivity costs.
And
It's-
was the application of Sears Ball received during that?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
so they fit
they
into
have
that
met
window.
that criteria, yes. And so the 24,000 estimate for connecting all of the units includes the one free drop.
Thank you.
that
That
they get
was
to
where I
parcel.
was going. Thank
Yes.
you.
Any other questions?
By the way,
Go ahead.
free is not the right word, sorry.
Yes. It's
I would-
free.
I would tell you, I think the one free drop is my office over there.
So let me make sure your office is more important. No, just joking.
You know, this was some of the original low affordable housing
Yeah.
for this island. I won't go through the names, but you'll know the names that are there.
I know
They're
that.
people
Of
that live
course,
here
yeah.
year
You know very
round.
well. Yeah.
People go out in either small boxes or 6-foot coffins. And we have a waiting list of about 30. And it's existing housing and, you know, it needs a lot of
So,
help.
so this is I don't know whether this is solvable, my challenge. Because philosophically, I think an essential component of this whole project is to ensure access sort of across the socioeconomic spectrum. So I'm all in. I have to say, this is a place where my gears grind because you have this literally gigantic federal program that is designed to ensure access to all households to broadband. And it feels like the feds should be paying for this. It's a HUD, you know, you know what so it's not a like, I don't want to pay for these apartments. It's just kind of like, gosh, darn it all.
Yeah, and I understand what you're saying. I think Amy will support me on this. You would think that USDA
Right.
Yeah.
would be able to do this. You
Yeah.
think USDA would be able to loan us $2 or $3 million to put new siding, new windows, because the place is falling down. You would think. USDA funding has just dried up. We can't get any. And so it's a classic case because you hear about these millions and billions of dollars that have gone to the state and
Yeah.
come down from the federal government. I think, why can't we get that?
It's
We
not
can't.
a,
I think
uh,
Amy would say she can't get it for the water company either.
Yeah.
So I understand what you're saying,
Yeah.
Keith, but
It's not a,
50% of the people or more are going to have to use the affordable connectivity or whatever plan to put it into their apartment if they want to. Because they aren't going to be able to afford that expense.
Amy, is there, in commerce under their, I'm talking about federally, is there a way for us to apply to get this funded?
So, and Jim did ask that question
Yeah.
of us, the town, and the town doesn't have the resources or the time to pursue those for individual
So it would have to be done
individual
individually.
entities at
Gotcha.
at this time. You know, I've offered to support their process, but I
Yeah.
can't pursue that individually.
Yes.
So, and you know, the one thing I would add is that
Mhm.
at the state level, they are not yet prepared to address that. We're a little bit ahead of them.
It won't be up and running until we've.
So,
Well, look, for me, I don't know how anybody else feels, but for me, the, what I feel is like a fundamental philosophical thing for me about access across the spectrum, trumps my, frustration over the feds not paying. That's. Did you believe the HDC? This is gonna be my thing. So, how do other people feel about that?
Are there any other potential discussions like this on the horizon? Not necessarily HUD or USDA, but other pockets that,
I believe there are one or two that might be similar enough to this. That you could make arguments whether are they similar or not.
and is there a way to, if we approve this one or those, that we could bundle it together and go to the state as housing? I mean, I'm just trying to think about, is there a way that we can claw anything back? And I know we don't have the resources, I heard that, but like if we went out and got somebody to help us with that. Because I mean, 24 is one thing, if it's 80,000, that gets a little bit bigger, or whatever the number may be.
This is the only building, facility, property, whatever, that fits this criteria.
It
Right?
is the only one that is HUD eligible.
Okay, mine was just a yes or no question. I didn't want answers for what it was. This is the only one that fits the criteria out here.
Well, we're the only section 515 housing on this aisle.
That's all,
to answer your
that's all I
question.
wanted. Yeah, thank you.
Molly?
And we're not talking about 24, we're talking about 30,000, right?
I thought it was 12 and 12. No?
Well, there's a 6.
Did I
it
read
says
that incorrectly? It's
6 for
entirely
the
fine.
first building. I don't know, it's confusing. me,
It-
Trin.
it's
So
roughly 24.
6,000 for each of 2 buildings okay, got it. Okay, so that's 12. All right, I'm adding the extra 6 in. 24.
So back to my question, Amy, is there a way, if we had resources or there was an outside, that you think there's any chance we could bundle these?
I think you could certainly try. I think that the reality that it will be after the fact and on a reimbursable basis makes success unlikely.
Okay.
If you want my honest answer.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah.
What's our time frame on this for like trying to find funding?
It is actually very short, in that Surtax is at the end of their drop construction phase. And so the teams that you see don't do that kind of work. If we collectively wait too much longer, then Searles Sprawl actually becomes responsible for the additional mobilization costs. So we want to avoid that, no matter who pays the bill.
So Amy, do you have any recommendation for if we were to fund this, where the money would come from? If it's going to come out of broadband, if it's going to come out of the town?
It would come out of the broadband fund, yes. Although I'm hearing voice in the background suggesting the ARPA funds as a potential pot as well. I'm just passing that through the mic.
I wish we had had a little more notice on this. This seems very last minute. Like everything on the agenda is so last minute.
I would make a motion to approve socializing the cost of the hookup to the section 515 housing Ball O'Brien.
Second.
Do we need to say what funds are coming from?
It's, Amy just said it's coming from the broadband. It's basically you're basically
We're
socializing these
socializing
costs. That's basically what you're saying is whatever your the costs in the system will be $24,000 higher, which is borne across the board, right?
Yes. You know, if we can fit into that motion that we're going to continue to work for other sources until the day that we can't, but this would be.
I would
best.
amend my motion to say that
Unless
there's a
other
strong
outside
desire on
funders.
the part of the town to figure out ways with the state and federal governments to ensure that the entire cost of this is not borne by New Shoreham, town of New Shoreham taxpayers.
Amend my second.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Thank you.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Thank
Not
you.
an ideal solution.
No.
Why don't we put sea level rise?
They don't want it. Mary Ann.
So I'll be brief in my town manager's report and go through a couple of things really quickly. First of all, it appears with Harbors that CRMC did come back with, again, another minor verbiage change for the harbor management plan. And once again, we're hoping we see that pretty soon. Thank God Kate has the patience of a saint sometimes, but she's really hanging in with this particular project.
It's only been
The other
5
thing I
years.
want to bring to the council's attention, and you eventually, this language will be coming for you. The Harbor Commission will be discussing and acting on language prohibiting liveaboards on boats between November 1st and May 1st. Due to the fact that water's been turned off and there's no pump out service. There's been some concern about liveaboards in Old
Yes.
Harbor
Yep.
Yes.
this winter, so that will be addressed. But I'm pleased to report that both Library Director Kristen Bowman and also our Police Department has been actively participating in a number of training events, and that's one thing I've encouraged all staff to participate in those opportunities of training when they can. Also, some of you may have seen this, there was a press release that in the governor's budget, the governor's budget includes an additional $20 million paving for local communities. There's $15 million specifically for communities. The good news is the $15 million is divided by 39, so every city and town gets the same amount. And the amount has to be matched by 66% from the local community. What's the good news with us? I see this possibly dovetailing into the RIDOT project that we'll be seeing start in about 12 to 18 months. If you go back to the capital budget, we did have a road paving in there for next fiscal year, so this may really work out well for us. And also the planning board did review our long-term capital budget, and they determined that it was consistent with the comprehensive plan. And the meet and greet with Police Chief John Lynch will occur a week from tonight, Wednesday, the 26th, at the Spring House from 3 to 5 p.m. All are invited to attend. And that's pretty much all I have.
So
for this
if I can ask a quick question about that paving, so basically we basically get a 33% discount for paving up to 384.
That's correct. And it's all in the proposed
So you
budget.
get $1 million of paving for 600 grand,
Yes,
basically.
it's in the budget, so we'll see what happens.
I see.
The governor's proposal.
I like that distribution method.
Yeah.
That's
First
what I,
time
did
ever.
for the first time. We're getting the same amount as. Providence.
We know Providence has a change to it.
The same as Little Compton. Thank you very much, Mary Ann. Really appreciate it. Are there any questions for the town manager about her report? Thank you. Next, we have the awarding of the compensation study.
If you remember correctly, included in the contract, one of the unions was, and we agree that this is necessary, is to conduct a compensation and classification study. We did go out to bid proposals. It's not a bid, it's a proposal, request for proposal, which means it was relied strictly on dollar amount. We received 5 proposals, and there was 2 that the committee, which consists of myself, Bethany Petrick, Melanie Helterline, and Charlene, reviewed the proposals. We interviewed 2, and it was unanimous among the 4 of us that the recommendation to the council would be to award the proposal to Municipal Resource, Inc. of New Hampshire. We've spoken to them. They're ready to hit the ground running on this process and expect to have it done within 4 to 6 months. So
Great. Can I just say as an aside, I think it was really wise of you to include the union president in that, because it's going to have to be something that we do jointly, and I really appreciate that. What is the I'm a big supporter of this. It's an opportunity to ask a couple of questions. What is the product? You know, in other words, what gets delivered to the town for this? Is it an organizational chart with benchmark salaries? Is it, you know, what do we get?
So we, in the proposal, we asked for about a half dozen things. And just as an aside, now that we're going a little aside on this, I'm on a email list for all the city and town managers in the state, and received an email from, I can't remember where the gentleman was from, asking if any communities were interested in doing a compensation study. Everyone's having concerns and problems about filling a number of jobs in the municipal sector at all different levels. I responded and told them what we would do, and they were all like, can we see your proposal? And some other communities are also in the process of going out. What we requested, about 4 or 5 different things we requested on a proposal: a complete compensation study, salary, benefits, compensation comparison, and they'll determine what.
So they determine analogous towns.
Correct.
And then, you know, according to whatever their measures are.
Correct.
And then they show us where we.
And they show us where we
Yep.
fit. We also ask for evaluation tools, so they'll do that. We also ask for job description. We do have job descriptions. They're not up to date. They're not consistent.
Mhm.
And the last item we asked for in the proposal is an org chart. As the council knows, we don't have an org chart. So I think the end product we'll have is pretty comprehensive. The amount that they submitted as a price is less than the $50,000 that we had budgeted for this. So what I would like to do is, once they get through this, maybe spend a little extra money to have them come out maybe on more than one occasion and have a discussion with the council and the general public about the product. that
Great, that'd be wonderful.
they provide. I'm really excited about this project.
Hey, Jim.
Should be home by now. But I do think that this is one of those things the town has needed for a long time. The primary reason I think to do it, and this is from my HR experience, is that what you have is you have town employees that say, hey, you don't understand my job. My job has changed in the last 2 years. And I see somebody else over there, and I know they're getting paid more than I am, or they're in a higher job classification, and that's just incorrect. So I think the value of what Mary Ann is doing here is you start to set some internal equity.
Mhm.
I think it's good you have the comparisons with other towns, like what other towns pay for town managers. Well, you look at the job descriptions, and they're not all created the same. We have a harbors department. But I think the real beauty of doing this thing is really having the employees of the town. How many are there? 150 now? No, 42?
Yeah, if you're looking at just the town, it depends. when you define employees.
Was this going to include the school?
What it's including is, it does not include what I would call the certified employees of the school and those department positions at the school that are non-certified. There's more like your business manager and things of that nature. The union positions at the school that are the non-certified personnel, which be your custodian, teacher aides.
And it's not atypical that a corporation would do this kind of study every 5 years.
Sure.
Because
Yeah.
jobs change, as you know.
Yes.
But I think you're doing the right thing for a whole bunch of good reasons.
Absolutely.
So,
Any other questions? I would make a motion to approve the recommendation of the town manager to retain Municipal Resources, Inc. of New Hampshire for an employee compensation and classification study. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. Thank you. Thank you very much for doing that, Mary Ann. I know it's necessary and important. So I did a draft letter. I'm sorry, I'm on agenda item number 18, discuss and act on House of Representatives Tina Spears' request for modifications, recommendations, et cetera, on housing. I did a draft letter. I did it in full disclosure and honesty. I did it too late for it to appear in Clerkbase because I procrastinated. And, oh, is it on now?
Yep. Yeah, I'm looking.
Oh, Millie, you are the wind beneath my wings. So,
what it takes.
it is, you know, part of the reason I procrastinated is that I started doing this and literally going through every bill that she had listed. And the likelihood is that this is going to be consolidated into a piece of housing legislation or two pieces of housing legislation. And I thought it would be better if we were going to be responsive to actually write a letter about what our sense of priorities were, so that when she's reviewing those packages and advocating for us, she had a sense of what those things were. I think, quite frankly, she's been so engaged, she already has that sense. But so I viewed this letter as an opportunity to talk about that, about the extent to which housing is a priority for us. Frankly, the extent to which as prices have increased, we're losing people, and that makes housing more than do you have a house. It makes housing rise to the level of, we got to make sure that we're paying attention to this over the long term if we want a community over there. So that really is the focus of this letter that I drafted. Happy to, please edit away. If you'd rather take it home and redo it, that's totally fine. We just needed a place to start from.
Is there a benefit to writing it to Representative Spears and Senator DeMario?
I think I would send it to Spears and CC it to DeMario since the request came from Tina herself.
Okay.
But it doesn't, either.
Say-
way I
anyway, the
think is
point
fine.
being,
Yeah.
I want
Yeah.
Alana fighting
Yes.
as much as,
Yes.
and especially given her chair position, she's in a strong position to help.
Yes. So people, if you haven't seen it in the audience, the three main things I sort of call out are this accessory dwelling unit conversation is very important to us if we decide as a community, and we're in that process, that that type of development is more likely over the long term than multiple apartment complexes to solve our problem. Number one. Number two, I put funding for staff and experts, because as a practical matter, we have Marianne and Tom, who have totally full plates, Allison Ring, our town planner, who has a totally full plate, and Cindy Pappas, who just continues to astound me how much time she's able to commit to this and to moving the housing ball forward. And at some point, we have got to have some funding for our own housing staffing infrastructure if we're gonna really get projects from point A to point B. I imagine, Millie, you've seen that in your tenure. And then the other one is capital funding, because there is a lot of funding available. It seems to use something that Martha says often and accurately. It does seem, just from reading the paper, that the money tends to go to these big shiny projects, where for us, relatively small amounts of money really move our needle. And we're engaging in a conversation with the state around that. But I think to the extent that they're starting to allocate money, even things like allocating a particular gross dollar amount or percentage dollar amount to smaller communities, not for the 50 unit project, but for the 3 and 6 and 10. So anyway, that's the essence of what I talked about for those of you who haven't seen. If you want to just tell me to clean it up and send it, I'll do that. Okay, great. Yeah, great. Terrific. Thank you, guys. Rhode Island State Police budget, number 19. We don't often get to a number 19 and a number 20 on our agenda. Yeah. Hi, Gail.
So although we haven't received anything official, it's my understanding that the state police will be back out here at no charge to the town. But I have not received anything official, but I'm a little more optimistic.
Good. That's
So
great.
I'll, as soon as we hear something official, we'll let you know. I've asked Chief Lynch to be the
Wonderful.
conduit with
Thank you.
Colonel Weaver at this point.
So that'll be directly from the colonel, that official word.
Yes,
Good.
and
Thank
that's
you.
why I have the chief. I
Yep.
just spoke to the chief a couple of days ago and asked that he follow up.
By the way, my feeling is, that got so sideways last year that I think we should be great. We should express gratitude that it appears to be going more smoothly this year, and take the opportunity to thank the governor and point out again how important that part of our infrastructure. It's an essential part of our public safety infrastructure. So just so that it's, I'm hoping that we can snuff out, the way that got sideways with this governor, because we'll be dealing with him for 3 more budget cycles. So whatever we need to do there, I'd be happy to do. Are there any other comments on that one?
The only thing I would put in that is keeping the image not just of Block Island, but of Rhode Island
That's a good point.
with the governor.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because this is the touch point for people who fly. A lot of people who fly in, they come to Block Island, not to Rhode Island. A lot of people come from London, come to Block Island, not Rhode Island. If they know it's Rhode Island, but it's another problem.
Indeed. We have our list of vacancies. Commission on Motor Vehicles for Hire, 1 3-year position. It has to be someone without a taxi, bus, or limousine license, a town taxi license or limousine, bus or limousine license. Police Advisory, 1 5-year term. Water District Commission, 1 5-year term and 2 1-year terms. That's an alternate. that two-year term is an alternate. One 5-year term on the sewer district, and 2 1-year terms, two 1-year terms for alternates, sorry. So those are announced. I'm sorry, I did B instead of A, but we got a request from the North Lake Commission to decrease their seats from 7 to 5. Presumably this too is a ongoing quorum issue. I certainly don't have a problem with it. I was just so folks know, I was talking to Mary Ann today. It reminds me of parking, the parking work you're doing, Neil. I was looking through our ordinances to find out where we establish the number of people, for example, on the Harbors Committee. I can't find it.
At the last meeting?
Yeah.
You took no action at the last meeting on that, and you asked me to,
Yeah.
to garner some more information.
Yeah.
So Harbors didn't come up here
Yeah.
because
No, I wasn't picking, I was just saying my own exercise. I was struggling to find out where all this stuff was.
Yeah,
So
so there are, you are going to see some more of these coming. Charlene asked particularly if this could come up to you tonight because she
Great.
was feeling a little crisis about it.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you so much, because it's, I would make a motion to accept the North Lake Commission's recommendation to reduce their membership from 7 to 5. All those in favor indicate
Well,
by.
I have
Sorry.
something.
Oh,
So
sorry.
I'm wondering, and I certainly don't want to irritate Charlene, but we've had a lot of discussion recently about the North Light and I'm just wondering, so rather than reducing the number right away, if we couldn't try to find some people to serve on it, have they tried?
Quorum issue. So
No, I understand that it's a quorum issue,
Oh.
but, and that they have 2 people who don't, I mean, right, we would be taking resignations from these 2 people that live off island, I assume, right?
the point would be that if they have 3 people, they have a quorum. Right, versus 4. So.
I understand that.
Yeah,
Okay. All right, fine.
We can
No,
always
but-
increase it.
Weren't we
what would you-
taking another approach on, and I'm forgetting what it was, where they
talking about
couldn't get to
adding
quorum,
alternates.
adding alternates?
Yes.
So why wouldn't we treat them similar if that was going to be approached to see if it worked?
That's a great idea. So maybe could we make 2 alternate positions instead of 5 is a very small board.
I mean, I'm fine with 5, but if around consistency, if we're doing it for one group, why would we treat this group differently? And I don't know the groups well enough to,
Which groups you're talking about, that we just,
whichever one we spoke at the last
talked
meeting
about
and we said adding the alternates
Yeah.
because they were having a quorum issue.
but we can't find out what
I think that was
the word,
Harper's.
the Harbors. Because some of the sewer and the zoning or state statute.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm not trying to make a long meeting longer.
you're
I
not.
just wonder whether there's a different way to support the board.
So my concern, and I don't know this, but I'm assuming that part of the challenge in the immediate with these guys on Northlight is they're probably trying to meet to figure out what they're going to do this summer. So it's kind of, I actually agree philosophically with what you guys are saying, but we also I'm sorry, Millie, go ahead.
I don't want to interrupt
No,
you.
no, you didn't.
But we certainly could support making those 2 positions alternates. And that would still
have to
allow
be-
them to have that quorum issue and then certainly meet the needs.
Oh,
of-
that's a
of
great idea.
seeking
Can we do that?
Yeah,
I'll
absolutely.
withdraw my
Okay.
motion.
No, that's okay. I just,
No, I think we need to make a new motion because I think that's a really good idea. My motion would be to, go.
Can I say, Millie, so technically, that means they could have 3 people at the meeting. And have a quorum meeting because the alternates are all, okay. So there's no technical clerk difference between 5 and 2 alternates or 5.
Right, it just means that if those other two show, they could fill.
Participate or fill in.
It creates a bench,
Yeah, yeah.
basically.
I like zoning.
So I would make a motion that we reduce the number of f- regular members of the North Light Commission from 7 to 5 and have 2 alternates. So the new format would be 5 regular members and 2 alternates.
Second.
Is that clear enough?
Yeah. How
Millie?
many members do they have right now? I mean, active members, real members.
They have, if they have 7 seats.
But how many are
It's
filled? Like,
7 seats on the board and they have 5 members that may show up. But
So
yeah,
do
they're
we-
having a hard time getting a quorum.
do we
of
have to
4.
move 2 people to alternates where I'm trying to go?
And that is a very good point, Martha. I think that probably the 2 on noted in Charlene's memo would be the ones
Okay,
that would
let's,
be moved.
let's do the motion that's on the
Yep.
floor and then I'll make a second motion to appoint,
Do this one first.
yes, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. I would make a motion to appoint Donald Demers and Bruce Decker as alternate members of the North Light Commission. Is that right? I get that?
Yep.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Ayes have it. Motion to adjourn. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.